francs.
Yes.
What are you doing?
I'm tearing this 1,000-franc note in two, my friend. One half is yours now. The other half will be yours when you've answered my questions. Monsieur Caderousse, in the year 1814 or 15, did you know a young sailor by the name of Dantes?
Sailor? Dantes? Yes. Why do you ask? Is he alive?
No. He died in prison.
Died, eh? What did he die of?
What do young, strong men usually die of in prison? He died of sorrow and a broken heart.
Oh, dear.
And here's the strange thing. To the very end, Dantes swore he was utterly ignorant of the cause of his imprisonment.
So he was, poor fellow.
Why do you say that?
For no reason. Go on.
I was with him when he died. And with his last breath, he begged me when I came to Marseille to clear his name, and he gave me the names of the people who were his friends. There are three, he said, besides my father and the girl I was betrothed to. One of them is you, Caderousse.
He said that?
The second man is a man called Danglars.
Danglars?
The third is a certain Fernand Mondiego.
Mondiego?
Yes. You know these men?
Know them. Listen. I could tell you something about those two. Not that it would do much good now that he's dead.
Who?
That young fellow you were talking about. The sailor, Edmond Dantes.
What do you mean? It wouldn't do him much good.
Just what I say. Do you know who sent Dantes to prison?
No.
Well, I do. Two men who were jealous of him. One for love and one for ambition. And you know who they were? I'll tell you. Mondiego and Danglars.
I thought they were his friends.
Yes, so he thought.
What did they do?
They denounced him to the police as a traitor.
And was he a traitor?
No more than you or I. But they knew he had a letter on him from the Emperor Napoleon in exile. Something his dying captain had given him, and it looked bad.
Which of the two denounced him?
Both. Danglars was the sharp one. He wrote the letter, and Mondiego put the letter in the post.
What? When was this letter written?
In a cafe. The night before his wedding.
How do you know? Were you there?
I was at the next table. They thought I was too drunk to hear them, but I heard them. They sent the letter to the magistrate, de Villefort.
Villefort. If you knew all this when they arrested him, why didn't you speak?
I was afraid, monsieur. I was afraid of what they'd do to me, those two. Danglars was the sharp one, but Mondiego was quick with his knife. Oh, often at the time I repented it.
Well, now you've told the truth at last.
But Edmond Dantes is dead. He has not forgiven me.
He never knew what you'd done.
He knows it now. They say the dead know everything.
Yes. Now then, Caderousse, another 1,000 francs if you tell me the truth. You say those two gave him up because they were jealous of him.
That's right.
Why? Why was this Danglars jealous of him? They were shipmates.
Shipmates? How did you know that?
You told me just now. Why was he jealous of Dantes?
Danglars? Because he wanted his job.
Oh.
Yes, and they were mates together on the same ship. And the old captain died, and the owners made young Dantes captain. Danglars never forgave him.
And the other one, this Mondiego. What did he have against Dantes?
A girl.
A girl?
Yes. A girl Dantes was engaged to marry. She was Mondiego's cousin, and he wanted her, too. And, well, when he got his chance to get young Dantes out of the way, he took it.
I see. And now tell me, what happened to those two, Danglars and Mondiego? Do you know them still?
Where in heaven's name have you been, my friend? There isn't a man in France who doesn't know them. Danglars, a millionaire, has a banking house of his own. Baron Danglars, he calls himself now. And Mondiego's a baron, too, and a cabinet minister, and an officer of the Legion of Honor with a house in Paris a block wide. They've done pretty well for themselves, they have. And you'd think they'd remember their old friends, wouldn't you? But not they. They send the butler out with a 10-franc note. That's what they do.
Now then, tell me, how about this girl Edmond Dantes was betrothed to?
The girl?
Yes.
Mercedes?
Yes. Yes, that's her name. What happened to her?
Oh, that's a sad story. When Dantes was arrested, she was nearly mad with grief. Pitiful it was. 6 months went by, and there was no news of him, and every day there was her mother telling her that he was dead and telling her to marry Mondiego. She used to come to see old Dantes. Edmond is dead, he said to her. If he weren't, he would have returned to us. Then the old man died and left her quite alone. Still she waited, and still no word from him. Then, in the end, after a year, she married Mondiego. Now she's one of the greatest ladies in Paris.
A year? She waited a year.
What'd you say?
Nothing. Nothing. You say Edmond Dantes' father died?
Yes. Soon after his son disappeared.
What did he die of?
And if you want to know what I think, he died of starvation.
Starvation?
The doctor had another name for it, but I know better. He locked himself up in his room and died of starvation.
Later that day, the stranger appeared at the town hall and asked to see the prison records for the year 1815. He obtained permission to go through the case of a certain Edmond Dantes, imprisoned that year and subsequently reported as dead. He read the examination and record and noted with surprise that the name of Francois Noirtier, to whom the fatal letter had been addressed, never once appeared in it. There was a notation in the margin which read as follows: Edmond Dantes, an inveterate criminal, be kept in complete solitary confinement and to be strictly watched and guarded. It was signed Francois Noirtier de Villefort. Below, in another hand, was written, prisoner killed while attempting to escape. That night, the stranger left Marseille, going north. Diego Danglars de Villefort. Diego Danglars de Villefort. Ollie?
Yes, master.
Here are 100,000 francs. Spare no expense. Find out everything there is to know about those three. Every move they've made, every word they've said, every line they've written.
Yes, master.
Find out about their homes, their wives, their children, friends.
Yes, master.
Find out where they got their power, how they made their money, whom they robbed, whom they cheated, whom they murdered.
Yes, master.
One day in November, Baron Danglars, head of the banking house of that name, received a visit from a new client.
I have the honor of addressing the Count of Monte Cristo.
You have, Baron Danglars?
Have you been in Paris long, sir?
Since this morning.
I have a letter here, sir, from the firm of Thompson and French in Rome. A letter of credit in your name.
Good. Then I take it beginning today my checks will be duly honored by your house.
In this letter, there is one thing not quite clear.
Indeed.
According to this letter, the Count of Monte Cristo is to have unlimited credit on our house.
And what is there in that simple fact that requires explanation?
Merely that term, unlimited.
Are you suggesting that Thompson and French are not looked upon as solvent bankers?
Oh, no. It was not their solvency I spoke of, but the word unlimited in financial affairs is so extremely vague a term.
To me, Baron, the word means exactly what it says. It means without limitation.
Well, I assure you, sir, that up to the amount of $1 million...
I beg your pardon.
I assure you, should you at any time be hard-pressed, were you even to require $1 million francs...
1 million? Why, Baron, I always carry 1 or 2 million in some corner of my pocket. Expect me to call on you for 10 or 15 million on my first draft.
Well, I admit I hardly mean that.
If you would prefer not to handle this account, Baron Danglars, I have letters similar to yours addressed to Barings of London and Baron de Rothschild of the city. You need have no scruples in declining.
I assure you, I never entertained
No.
it.
You merely wish to be convinced that your stockholders ran no risk. Nothing more. Very sound, Baron Danglars. I understand they include some of the greatest names in France. Am I right? The Count de Mondiego?
Eh?
The Baron de Villefort?
It is not generally known that...
Oh, of course. Now we understand one another. I should like to draw tomorrow the sum of, shall we say, 6 million francs. Half gold, half note.
6 million francs? As you say...
If I should require more, I'll let you know. Oh, by the way, buy me tomorrow 10,000 shares of Austrian Commonwealth.
You have some information, sir, about this stock?
You will find, sir, that I never gamble, except in certainties. For Mondiego. Ali.
Yes, master.
What have you found out about these men? One, Danglars.
Danglars, banker. 3 times bankrupt.
convicted of using charity funds, recently suspected of plunging heavily with the funds borrowed from his own bank.
2. De Villefort?
De Villefort, formerly King's agent in Marseille, where he acted as Bonapartist spy under the name of Francois Noirtier.
Francois Noirtier.
Known to accept bribes. At present, Prosecutor General of King's Court. Said to speculate with funds borrowed from Danglars Bank.
3. Mondiego.
Mondiego, dismissed from naval service for theft. Tried for murder, 1816. Deserted French Army, 1824. Believed involved heavy losses, Danglars Bank.
Danglars, Villefort, Mondiego. 1, 2, 3.
Well, gentlemen, you're late, Villefort. What is it, Danglars? You sent for me in court. I hope it's something good this time. We need it.
Just arrived. A private message for the Count of Monte Cristo from the firm of Thompson and French from Rome. They've never been wrong yet.
Does he know we intercept his messages, Danglars?
Who cares?
What does it say? Read it, man.
A secret treaty has been signed tonight. Anglo-Italian shares due sharp rise. Buy all available shares. Thompson and French.
Well?
We are going to buy.
Danglars, I'm worried. Everything we've touched has gone wrong lately. Those Belgian bombs we bought, we lost $500,000
Whose
on.
fault is that? On whose information were they bought?
Can I help it, Danglars? The government changes its mind.
Our situation is desperate. We've got to plunge. We have no choice. If it were not for the Count of Monte Cristo's deposits, we'd have been bankrupt 3 weeks ago. Yes, you understand that? Bankrupt. If that money should be called for today or tomorrow or the next day, this bank is ruined.
Danglars, I don't see what that has to do with us.
You don't, eh? Well, if I go, you go. All of you. Make no mistake about that.
Oh, gentlemen, what do you propose to do about this, Danglars?
I propose to buy every share of Anglo-Italian that comes into this market.
With what?
With what? You forget, gentlemen, that the Count of Monte Cristo has 16 million francs on deposit in this bank.
Oh, yes, I see. Well, what about this message of his? Does the Count of Monte Cristo get to see it?
This message, gentlemen, was lost in transmission. Buy 300 shares of Anglo-Italian. 104.
Sold Danglars and Company. Sell 200 Anglo-Italian.
105. 110.
Sold Danglars and Company. Sell 500 Anglo-Italian.
110.
115. 115.
125.
Sold Danglars and Company.
Buy 300 shares of Anglo-Italian.
130.
135.
Sold Danglars and Company.
Buy 1,000 shares at 150. 175. 210.
215.
Anglo-Italian. I'll buy anything offered. Anglo-Italian. I buy anything offered. Anglo-Italian. I buy anything offered.
Rarely has Paris been more intrigued than it was that winter by the mysterious Count of Monte Cristo. His wealth seemed inexhaustible, and it was said that for his carriage wheels alone he had paid 1 million francs. It was at the end of December that a great ball was given by the Baron Danglars.
Count of Monte Cristo.
Countess de Mondiego.
We have missed you.
In so short a time, madame.
A strange thought occurs to me.
Yes, madame?
It seems to me that you've been gone longer than I can say. It's an odd idea, Count, but I cannot shake it off.
You must think back, madame. Perhaps some half-forgotten moment in your past.
My past is not forgotten.
No? Then it is lost.
What's lost? What have you lost? Who are you?
You must forgive me, Countess. I have an appointment with your husband.
Tell me who you are.
Madame, I am the Count of Monte Cristo. And the world is mine.
Congratulations, Danglars. I got your message. Good day's work. Tell me, how much did we buy of Anglo-Italian?
62,000 shares.
62.
Yes.
How much profit does that show?
So far, Mondiego, 3 million.
3 million?
3 million, yes, and it's only a beginning.
Who is selling?
That I don't know. I couldn't find out.
Baron Danglars?
Yes?
Count of Monte Cristo would like a word with you.
Tell him I can't see him.
Good evening, gentlemen. A charming party. I hope I do not intrude. Danglars, de Villefort, Mondiego, how fortunate. Gentlemen, I'm here to say goodbye to all three of you.
Goodbye.
I've decided to leave Paris for a while, perhaps forever. Before I go, there are certain things I've left to do. Baron Danglars, I'm in need of money. My credit on your books as of tonight is 16 million francs. That's about 4 million to cover certain stocks I sold short today. Here's a check for 10 million francs made out to cash. My carriage will be at your bank at 9 o'clock. I'll take half in gold and half in notes.
But surely...
I beg your pardon.
Sir, such a very large sum. If you could conveniently wait for this money for 24 hours, or at the most, 48.
I have told you, Baron Danglars, I am leaving Paris in the morning. Oh, by the way, Baron, you will be interested to learn that less than an hour ago, Anglo-Italian went into liquidation.
What?
Yeah, liquidation. This moment, that stock is worth less than the paper on which it is printed.
The message.
The message from Thompson and
That message was sent on my instruction 3 days ago. You see, gentlemen, I own Thompson and French.
But isn't it true about the treaty?
As far as I know, Mondiego, there was not any question of a treaty. It means that you three gentlemen are ruined. It means that you, Danglars, have robbed the poor and the helpless for the last
I'll
time.
prosecute you with this. I'll issue a warrant for your arrest.
I don't think you will, Baron de Villefort. In the first place, that message was addressed to me. In the second place, since noon today, there has been in the hands of the Minister of Justice a complete record of the career of Francois Noirtier, also known as Baron de Villefort. Spy, thief, forger, informer.
Who are you?
Who am I, Mondiego? Still you don't know. I know you very well, Fernand Mondiego. And tomorrow all Paris will know you for what you are. Deserter, traitor, murderer.
Who are you? What have we done to you?
What have you done to me? You condemned me to a slow, horrible death. You killed my father. You deprived me of love, of freedom, of happiness.
What is your name?
I have but to pronounce it, Mondiego, to strike you to my feet. Look at me, Fernand Mondiego. I am the specter of a wretch you buried in the dungeons of the Chateau d'If. You guess it now, do you not? Or rather, you remember it? For notwithstanding all my sorrows and my tortures, I show you now a face which the happiness of revenge makes young again. A face you must often have seen in your dreams since your marriage, Fernand Mondiego, with Mercedes, my betrothed. Yes! I am Edmond Dantes. Countess Mondiego.
Yes, Count?
Your husband has been detained. There are matters of urgency which will not permit him to leave this house. May I see you to your carriage?
Yes, Count. I asked you a question. I wonder if your answer was the truth.
Madame?
The girl who made you suffer. I asked if you had forgiven her.
Yes. Yes, I've forgiven her.
And those who separated you? Do you still wish to punish them?
Madame, they have been punished. But my answer is still the same. It is not I who punished them. It was their own past.
This concludes our Campbell Playhouse presentation of The Count of Monte Cristo, starring Orson Welles. In just a moment, Orson Welles will return to the microphone. Just now, I'd like another word with you on something good to eat. You know, I really believe your very first spoonful of Campbell's chicken soup will be a revelation in how fine, how deep in chicken flavor a chicken soup can be. I'm prompted to say this because I know so well from having visited Campbell's kitchens what good things are in this chicken soup and how carefully it's made. To begin with, unlike most chicken soup made at home, Campbell's use not some, but all the choice meat of selected plump chickens. But apart from this one advantage, they follow closely the old home way of making chicken soup. They simmer the broth long and slowly till every golden drop is rich with chicken flavor. And then they measure in light, fluffy rice and add tempting pieces of tender chicken meat to complete your enjoyment. Now, doesn't that sound like a chicken soup you'd enjoy? I really believe it is. And so I say, just as sure as you like chicken, you like Campbell's chicken soup. Have it tomorrow, won't you? And now, here's Orson Welles with news of next week's story.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is. The native quarter, known as the Kasbah. As you look at it here, it's just a few lines on the map. But the reality is something stranger than anything you could have dreamed. It's only a step from the modern city to the Kasbah. But when you take that step, you enter another world. A melting pot from all the sins of the earth, a crawling anthill, a jungle of houses, a labyrinth of narrow passages and winding alleys, rotten with vermin and decay and the filth of centuries. No one knows what mysteries are hidden behind those walls. No one knows what crimes and hopes are buried in those secret courtyards. 40,000 inhabitants from all over the world, Chinese, Gypsies and Checos, Slavs far from home, and Maltese, Negroes from every corner of Africa, Sicilians, and Spaniards, hot-blooded and quick to hate, and women of every age and of every shape, women caught in the net of the Kasbah. The Kasbah which rises like a fortress from the sea, colorful, sordid, and dangerous. There isn't just one Kasbah. There are hundreds, thousands. And in that labyrinth, Pepe El Moco is at home. And he's safe as long as he stays there. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the introduction to next week's broadcast. It's what Detective Slemaine tells the detective from Paris about Pepe El Moco, one of the greatest criminals the world has ever known, who found himself one of the most successful hideouts, a criminal ever unearthed. The Kasbah. That ought to do for the Oriental music. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Kasbah is the scene of next week's broadcast. The title, which we have neglected to mention, is the name of one of the weirdest, wildest places on the globe and one of the best romantic adventure stories ever put on the screen. Algiers. You remember it from the French picture and from Walter Wange's wonderful American picture. Our guest next week, the lovely Paulette Goddard. Please join us. Until then, till next Sunday night, until the Kasbah and Pepe El Moco. At the same time, my sponsors, the makers of Campbell Soups, and all of us on the Campbell Playhouse remain, as always, obediently yours.
In tonight's Campbell Playhouse production of The Count of Monte Cristo, Orson Welles played the part of Edmond Dantes, The Count of Monte Cristo. The part of Caderousse was played by Ray Collins. Everett Sloane was the Abbe Faria. Frank Reddick was Villefort, and George Couloris was Danglars. The part of Mondiego was played by Edgar Barrier, and that of a jailer by Richard Wilson. Agnes Moorehead played Mercedes. The music for the Campbell Playhouse is arranged and directed by Bernard Herrmann. The makers of Campbell Soup join Orson Welles in inviting you to be with us at the Campbell Playhouse again next Sunday evening when we bring you our adaptation of that colorful and successful motion picture story, Algiers, with Orson Welles and Paulette Goddard. Remember, Campbell Playhouse, next Sunday evening. Meanwhile, if you have enjoyed tonight's presentation, won't you tell your grocer so tomorrow when you order Campbell's Chicken Soup? This is Ernest Chappell saying thank you and good night. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Good evening. This is Orson Welles, your producer of a special series of broadcasts presented by the makers of Pabst Blue Ribbon. The Mercury Summer Theater of the Air.
Tonight and every Friday night, Pabst Blue Ribbon presents you with a front row seat in America's favorite summer theater. So, while America's famous producer, writer, director, Orson Welles entertains you, pour yourself a tall, frosted glass of Pabst Blue Ribbon and enjoy at the same time great entertainment and this truly great beer. And now, Mr. Welles.
Tonight, the Mercury brings you two great American short stories. The first, as per last week's promise, is by Sherwood Anderson. His loving study of puppy love at the turn of the century is called I'm a Fool. Well, it began at 3 o'clock one October afternoon in 1912 as I sat in the grandstand at the fall trotting and pacing meet at Sandusky, Ohio. It was a good hard jolt for me, and it all came about through my own foolishness, too. Summer before, I'd left my hometown with a fellow called Bert French with two horses as campaigning through the race meets that year. Gee, it was fun. We got to county seat town maybe on a Saturday or Sunday, and the fair began next Tuesday, and you took your horses to the track and fed them. You got your good clothes out of a box and put them on. The town is full of farmers gaping because they see you as horse race people, and all the dudes come around asking questions, and all you did was to lie and all you could, you know, about horses you had and lie and say you owned one. Gee, oh, this is what I want to tell my story about. We got home late November, and I promised Mother I'd quit the races for good. There's a lot of things you got to promise a mother because she don't know no better. And then as I started to tell you, the fall races came to Sandusky, and I got the day off and went. And I had on my good clothes and my new brown derby hat and a stand-up collar. I had $40 in my pocket and three 25-cent cigars. That was bought me at the West House by a fellow with a cane and a Windsor tie. Gee, it was fun being on a track again.
What's your choice? Get your bets down.
What are you giving for ptarmigan?
I'd do for ptarmigan.
5 to 2.
5 to 2, Marigold.
Gee, it was fun being on a track again. There was my old friend Bert French standing around with his horses. Hello, Bert.
Well, hello, Joe. Hello, stranger.
How have you been, Bert?
Oh, never better. Say, you got any money, Joe?
Sure.
How'd you like to watch it grow?
Like it fine, Bert.
All right, come over here then. I'll tell you something. Now, listen, Joe. In the second race, the 218 pace, there's a horse I'm handling. Abu Ben-Adam. There he is, number 7. That gelding's fast as a streak, Joe. Belongs to a fellow called Mathers in Marietta, Ohio. We got him marked at 221, but he can step in 08.
08, gee.
In the first heat, don't you touch him. He'll go around like an ox, hitched to a plow. After that, you get him right down and lay on your pile.
Thanks, Bert, a lot. Have a cigar?
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
What is going on, ptarmigan? Get your bets down on the first race.
Well, sir, I went and bought myself the best seat I could get.
Butter popcorn, crisps, and strawberry bars.
Right in front of myself, I could see that there was a fellow with a couple of girls, and they was about my age, and the young fellow was a nice guy, all right. He had his sister with him and another girl, and the sister looked around over his shoulder. Accidentally at first, not intending to start anything. She wasn't that kind, and her eyes and mine happened to meet. You know how it is. Gee, she was a peach. She had a soft dress, kind of blue stuff, and she blushed when she looked right at me, and so did I. She was the nicest girl I ever seen in my life. Well, pretty soon the horses came in for the 218 pace, and there was Bert's horse in among the rest.
What'll we bet on this time?
Well, you know as much about it as I do.
What about the brown one there with the long tail? He's kind of cute.
Heck, ma'am, that mare couldn't beat a streetcar. They looked up kind of surprised, but they didn't seem mad, and anyway, I'd done it now. Might as well go on. Maybe I can help you folks. There's a horse in this race, number 7. That horse is as fast as a streak. Boo Ben-Adam, his name is.
What's his name?
Boo Ben-Adam. But look, don't go betting on this first heat, because he'll pace it like a lame cow. But when the first heat is over, go right down and lay your pile on a Boo Ben-Adam. He'll come right out and skin him alive. That's what I told her. Gee, and
What did that young fellow do but have the nerve to turn and ask the man next to him to get up and change places with me so I could sit with his crowd?
I want you to meet Miss Eleanor Woodbury.
Pleased to meet you.
And this is my sister, Lucy Wesson. Oh, my name's Wilbur. We're from Tiffin, Ohio.
Popcorn, crisps, and strawberry bars.
I suppose it was their having such swell names got me off the trolley, and then that girl, you know how a fella is. There's something in that kind of nice clothes and kind of nice eyes she had, and the way she looked at me a while before over her brother's shoulder, and me looking back at her, and both of us blushing. I couldn't show her up for a boob, could I? I made a fool of myself, that's what I did. Glad to know you all. My name's Walter Mathers.
How do you do, Mr. Mathers?
I'm from Marietta, Ohio.
And you really think this horse is going to win, Mr. Mathers?
Then I told him all the smashingest lie you ever heard. I said my father owned this horse, you know, Boo Ben Adam, and it was supposed to be a secret because I told him our family was proud and never had gone in for racing that way. Here's what I think of that horse. Wilbur, will you do me the favor when you go down to place these 30 bills on a Boo Ben Adam at whatever odds you can get? I'd go myself, but I just soon our trainer and the swipes didn't see me. I'm supposed to be here keeping an eye on him, incognito. And sure enough, a Boo Ben Adam went off his stride up the backstretch and looked like a wooden horse or a sick one and came in to be last. See, folks? What'd I tell you? Like a lame cow.
Well, you certainly were right, Mr. Mathers.
Then this Wilbur Wesson went down to the betting place out of the grandstand, Miss Woodbury with him, and Lucy Wesson and I was left alone together like on a desert island. Gee, Miss Lucy, I'd like to show you our place down at Marietta. It's on a hill, a great old red brick house with the stables behind it, way up on a hill, up above the Ohio River.
Oh, I like rivers.
Her eyes were shining. Then she kind of, with her shoulder, you know, kind of touched me, you know how a woman can do. They get close, but not getting gay either. You know what they do. Gee. I began to wish I was on the square with her and to see what a fool I'd been. There wasn't any way of getting myself on the square now. There ain't any Walter Mathers. Like I said to her, there ain't ever been one. But if there was, I bet I'd go to Marietta, Ohio, and shoot him tomorrow. And then Wilbur Weston come back with Miss Woodbury, and he'd gone and bet $50 on this horse, and the girls had gone put in $10 each of their own money, too. Gee, I was sick then, but came out okay. There he goes! Boo Ben Adams stepped the next 3 heats like a bushel of spoiled eggs going to market before they could be found out.
Look at him, Mr. Mathers.
Yeah.
Look at him coming up.
Boo Ben Adams!
No, he's served.
There he is, coming up! He's coming up! Boo Ben Adams!
He's second now, Mr. Mathers. He's going to win. He's going to win.
Well, we all got 9 to 2 for our money after the race. We had a hack downtown. Wilbur stood us a swell supper at the West House and a bottle of champagne besides. And there I was with that girl, baked boob that I am. And she wasn't saying much. I wasn't saying much either. One thing I know, she wasn't stuck on me because of that lie about my father being rich and that lie about all that. There's a way you know. Perhaps mighty. There's a kind of girl you see just once in your life. You don't get busy and make hay, then you're gone for good and all. You might just well go jump off a bridge because what it means is you want that girl to be your wife and you want nice things around her like nice flowers and swell clothes and you want her to have the kids you're going to have and good music played and, not ragtime. Gee. Well, there's a place over near Sandusky across a kind of bay. It's called Cedar Point, and after we'd had supper, we went over to it in a launch, just the 4 of us by ourselves.
What time's that train, Wilbur?
10:40.
And is that the last train?
Yeah, that's the last train.
Oh, Shaw.
Over at Cedar Point, there was a beach. You could walk along, get where it was dark, and we went there. She didn't talk hardly at all.
Neither did I. I was thinking how glad I was my mother was all right and always made us kids learn to eat with a fork at the table, you know, and not spill soup and not be noisy and rough like a gang you see around a racetrack that way.
Hey, Lucy! Lucy! We're going up the beach a ways. Are you coming? Go on ahead. We'll wait for you here. I feel kind of tired. Don't you?
Oh, yeah. I guess so, Miss Lucy.
Well, why don't we sit down a while? It's nice here.
Lucy and I sat out in a dark place where there were some roots of old trees the water had washed up.
Feel that wood. How smooth it is. Like silk.
And there was a watery smell, and the night was like as if you could put your hand out and feel it. So warm and soft and dark and sweet, like an orange. After that, the time till we had to go back in the launch and they had to catch their train wasn't nothing at all. Went like winking your eyes.
Lucy! Lucy, it's nearly there.
Lucy!
I've got to go. We've got to go to the train now. Will you kiss me goodbye?
She was most crying then, but she never knew nothing I knew. She couldn't be all busted up as I was. Gee whiz. Sometimes I wish I'd never been born. Guess you know what I mean. We went in the launch across the bay to the train like that, and it was dark, too.
What are you thinking about? You know what I was thinking?
What?
Well, I was thinking that you and I could get out of this boat right this minute and walk on the water.
Sounded foolish, all right, but I knew what she meant. Then quick, we were right at the depot, and there was a big gang of yaps crowded and milling around like cattle, and how could I tell her?
Oh, it won't be long because you'll write, and I'll answer you.
I got a chance like a hay barn of fire. A swell chance. I gotta answer her. Maybe she'd write me down at Marietta that way, and the letter'd come back and stamped on the front of it by the USA. There ain't any such guy, or something like that. Whenever they stamp on a letter that way.
Well, goodbye, Walter.
Goodbye.
And thanks for the tip-off. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Mr. Mathers. Goodbye. 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 Goodbye.
When that train went, I busted out and cried like a kid. Gee, I could have run after that train, made Man o' War look like a freight train after a wreck, but sucks almighty, what was the use? Did you ever see such a fool? Me trying to pass myself off for a big bug and a swell to her? Did you ever see such a fool? I'll bet you what, if I had an arm broke right now or a train had run over my foot, I wouldn't go to no doctor at all. I'd go sit down and let it hurt and hurt. That's what I'd do, big fool that I am. Why was I such a boob to go and tell such a lie that couldn't ever be made straight to a lady like her? If I'm not a fool, you just go and find me one. I'll quit working and be a bum and give 'em my job. I don't care for working and earning and saving for no such boob as myself. You've just heard part one of our Mercury broadcast for tonight, I'm a Fool. We offer you another famous American short story for part 2, maybe the most famous of all. Like our first selection, this is a study of a terrible mistake. But there all similarity ends. Clearly, Sherwood Anderson's hero lived down his mistake and lived happily ever after. The same, however, cannot be said of the murderer in Edgar Allan Poe's monologue, The Telltale Heart. That's next on the bill, but first here's Jimmy Wallington with some sound conclusion on the subject of picnics.
Out here in California, it's always picnic time. Unless, of course, we happen to have an extra heavy dew. So, as a Californian and an old hand at picnics, I want to tell you there's nothing which puts over one of these outdoor banquets better than plenty of blended, splendid Pabst Blue Ribbon. Yes, that potato salad, those hard-boiled eggs. I like the devil kind myself. Those cold cuts. Everything just naturally tastes better when blended with those never less than 33 fine brews. And you know why? Well, it's because Pabst Blue Ribbon has just the right flavor for a picnic. Not too heavy, not too light, but fresh, clear, sparkling with a real beer taste coming through the way you like it. You bet there's no finer beer, picnic time or any time, than blended, splendid Pabst Blue Ribbon. So if your dealer is unable to supply all the Pabst Blue Ribbon you'd like, why, just keep on asking for blended, splendid Pabst Blue Ribbon. And now Orson Welles brings you his Mercury production of The Telltale Heart.
True. Nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been, an M. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It's impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture. A pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man and thus rid myself of the eye forever. I was never kinder to him than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh, so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed, so that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me a whole hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously, oh, so cautiously, cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon that vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights. Every night, just at midnight, but I found the eye was always closed. And so it was impossible for me to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone and inquiring how he'd passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man indeed to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. To think that there I was opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on his bed suddenly as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back. But no. I did not draw back. I kept pushing the door. Steadily. Steadily. I had my head in and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening and the old man sprang up in the bed. Who's there? I kept quite still and I said nothing. For a whole hour, I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime, I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening, just as I have done night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently, I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been saying to himself, it's nothing but the wind in the chimney. It's only a mouse crossing the floor. Or it's merely a cricket which has made a single chirp. But it was all in vain. Because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a single dim ray like the thread of a spider shot from out of the crevice and full upon the vulture eye. It was open. The eye was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed on it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray as if by instinct precisely upon the damned spot. Now there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. But even yet I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker, and louder, every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say louder every moment. I thought the heart must burst. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. And then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. length, it ceased. The old man was dead. Stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. The night waned. I worked hastily. I took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited his corpse between the scantling. I then replaced the board so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. When I'd made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock, but still dark. Dark as midnight. Huh? A knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered now 3 men who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted familiar things. But ere long, I felt myself getting pale, and I wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied that ringing in my ears again, but still they sat and still they chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued until at length I found that the noise was not within my own ears. It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I talked more quickly, more vehemently. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Oh, God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore, I swung the chair upon which I'd been sitting and grated it upon the boards, but the noise arose over all and continually increased. It grew louder, louder. Still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible? They heard not? Almighty God, no! They heard, they suspected, they knew. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. Louder. Hark. Louder. Villains! I shrieked. Dissemble no more, I admit the deed. Tear up the flanks. Here! Here! It is the beating of his hideous heart.
You have just heard Orson Welles in his Mercury production of The Telltale Heart. Mr. Wells will return in just a moment. But first, let me again remind you to be patient with your dealer when occasionally these days he is unable to supply you with all the Pabst Blue Ribbon you'd like. He's doing his best, you can be sure of that. Yes, and here's something else you can be sure of. Every single bottle of Pabst Blue Ribbon you do get will, as always, be the happy blending of never less than 33 fine brews. Yes, every foaming, frosty glass you enjoy will, as always, have that famous Pabst Blue Ribbon flavor. Not too heavy, not too light, but fresh, clean, sparkling, with a real beer taste coming through the way you like it. So keep asking for blended, splendid Pabst Blue Ribbon. And now, Mr. Wells.
Next week, Moby Dick. Until then,
The Mercury remains as always, obediently yours.
This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Unlimited.
Hello, Americans. This is Orson Welles. This radio show is brought to you by the men and women of Lockheed and Vega. Tonight we're going to talk about voyages. What's the definition of a voyage? Voyages are made by man in two dimensions, space and time. On November 28, 1520, Magellan brought his high ships into the Pacific from the Atlantic side. On April 7, 1521, he anchored at Cebu in the Philippines. A voyage of 8,000 miles in 128 days. What we say a voyage was? Man's passage through space and time. All right, then. Here's another voyage. 8,000 miles in 7 days. Out in San Francisco Bay, the China Clipper idles her engines. It's Friday, November 22nd, 1935. The president of the line talks to Ed Music.
You have your sailing orders, Captain. Cast off and depart from Manila in accordance therewith.
Well, this is it. Practice flights, flying blind, landing blind. Now the real thing. Important item concerning China Clipper's flight from San Francisco to Manila. It got there. Stirring message radioed back by Captain Music when big news syndicate radioed for interesting episodes during trip.
Sunset, 6:39.
Dramatic remarks of Captain Ed Music on landing exactly on schedule at Manila.
No incident.
Sunset 6:39. Trip without incident. Years of work made those speeches that short. A room full of dreamers in 1927, the first 90 miles. In 1941, the Clippers flew as many people as live in the city of Houston, Texas. It's a lot of people in the sky. Voyages? Pacific Clipper on its regular run, rather smugly on schedule. December 7th our time, December 6th their time. The wireless starts to chatter. Radio officer John Poindexter hands the message to Captain Ford. They look at each other. Message is 2 words. Plan A.
Clipper to Pan American Terminal, Auckland, and proceeding according to Plan A just received. Japs between us en route back to Hawaii. We'll have to make a return trip the long way around.
The long way around, I'll say. Around the world. Voyages? Over the Timor Sea, across the Dutch East Indies, Java, Sumatra, the Bay of Bengal, India, the Arabian Sea, the Persian Gulf, the Congo, the Atlantic Ocean. A single hop to the northern shoulder of Brazil, and on the bitter cold morning of January 6, 1942, the glass wall control room at LaGuardia Field, New York.
Pacific Clipper inbound from Auckland, New Zealand. Captain Ford reporting. Due arrive Pan American Marine Terminal 7 minutes.
And 7 minutes later, 14 men stepped from the plane into the bitter dawn wearing summer clothes, tropical shorts. Never mind what they were wearing. The space and time? Yes, sir. 31,500 miles in 34 days. All the way around the globe to avoid the enemy. Never mind asking if those men dressed in Singapore shorts didn't feel a little silly as they sat shivering in a New York taxi. Never mind asking about the radio officer Poindexter. Told his wife to hold dinner for him in San Francisco on the night of December 2nd. A dinner that waited cold on the table for 31,500 miles. 34 days. Never mind, because we're talking about voyages in their simplest terms. Man's passage through space and time. What is space, anyway? Is a mile in a 4-engine plane with a 50-mile wind on its tail the same mile that Magellan's cutwater rippled through and his slow lugger? Even those Bibles of space, maps, can be liars. When Pan American sent out an expedition to set up a base at Midway, they took along the official survey map. In the 13 years since the map was made, the island had grown. added 1,200 feet to itself. No, the word space is out if it's an accurate scientific definition you're after. What about time? Time's all right in its place, I guess. Don't let it go out of bounds, that is, but keep it down to nice, homey proportions. It's very handy to navigators and watch merchants and railroad engineers and senators who get themselves into a frenzy over something called time and a half. Nothing's the matter with time. It's all right. Even if you do have to overlook such a clumsy convention as that place on the vacant side of the world, the date line in the Pacific, where Tuesday is Thursday or Thursday Tuesday, depending on which way you're headed. And Wednesday's something you just don't talk about. But look through a 10-inch telescope at the nebula in Andromeda. Great watch spring, suddenly released and expanding, even exploding. A still picture of a universe exploding. And if you look at it for 300 years, you'll still see no movement. But it will still be exploding. Someone else's idea of an explosion. Someone else's time. And the creeping beetle's time. Measuring his day not by one revolution of the earth, but by 1 inch of change in a reaching shadow of grass. So time is a gray-haired man in the back room of a railroad teaser, a midnight supper in his desk, the green eye shade in his eyes. A time is a static giant, unwinding universes with his slow hand. For time is the thin, quick pulse of a beetle. So there's our definition of a voyage shot to pieces. No space, no time that we can count on.
Excuse it, please, Mr. Wells. But I know what you left out of that definition. Men. Guys like us.
And who are you?
Nobody much. But take that voyage you talked about. The China Clipper's first trip across the Pacific. 8,000 miles in 7 days.
Were you along?
No, but there wouldn't have been any voyage if us guys hadn't made bases for the Clipper on Midway and Wake.
What was your job?
Crane operator. We didn't have any harbors where we were going. But we dumped 10,000 tons of airway base there, 75-foot water tanks, a 100-foot beacon, a seawater distiller, and a pier. Then there was Wake Island. You've heard plenty about Wake, but there wasn't anything there to talk about until us guys made it a place the Japs wanted to take. A 3-island atoll with nobody on it but a lot of screaming frigate birds that hadn't seen a man for 200 years. We had to unload lighters, 2,000 tons by hand. And we had to push those lighters into the lagoon with our own hands, too, standing in 10-foot surf, with those frigate birds screaming at us, and us feeling like pirates come to bury a treasure. But the pirates came after, to steal it from us, our work and all. I guess a lot of boys gave their lives to protect all that work we put in on Wake Island. Well, anyway, mister, that's what you left out. All that corn about time and space don't mean a thing. Nothing matters except people, guys, and what they do. And I guess those Japs came to steal that place, and all the good sweat and work we put into it, they're going to find out sooner or later, too.
How about the planes? Well, I don't mean the planes, but us fellas have built them, eh? You can't put your finger on space and time, but you can on us. And then there were the kids who made the weather books. Researched every steamer log for the Pacific in 30 years. They had to go back, like us. We had to go to the museum and measure seagulls. They found what they wanted in the faded logs of sailing ships. American clippers of the 19th century. Sailing ship weather is closer to airplane weather.
So what would you say, then, was a definition of an important voyage?
Well, I don't know. Except that it's got to be a pioneer voyage. That is, if you don't add something new to what you know already, it's not a voyage that means anything. Excuse the words, but, well, it's got to add something to the prestige of man.
All right, then. A voyage of historical significance is the passage of man through time and space in which he gains knowledge or other possessions. That's true, doesn't the voyage the Japs made to Wake Island fit the definition, too? Look at the prestige they gained at home.
Oh, no. Excuse me, sir. But there you go again. Of course it don't fit. We came to build. They came to destroy. The world goes ahead. The world's on a voyage, too. They're not just stopping us. They're stopping the world. And themselves, too. And someday they'll learn they can't set back our clock without busting their own.
Pardon me for interrupting.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Wells.
Yes?
You talked about the 14 men who stepped out of that plane last January in Singapore Short. Remember?
Yes?
Well, I was one of them.
Oh?
Yes. I worked on the clipper that made that round-the-world trip. Well, look. You gave everybody the idea that that was some sort of hit-or-miss voyage. You made them think that just because we had to give up our regular flight from New Zealand and come home the hard way, that we were just lucky we got there at all. Mr. Wells, we knew what we were doing, just as clearly as we knew what they, the Japs, were doing. I remember thinking about the night we crossed from Africa, South America. I was lying in my bunk, flying as steady as the moon on our beam. I could see all our guys in the moonlight. John Mack, Roddy Brown, Captain Ford, doing all the things they'd been training themselves for since they started flying. There wasn't any excitement. Nobody was scared. Maybe that was because we weren't just 14 guys after all. We were the sailor here, and this engineer, and all the hundreds of millions of men who've ever sat up late, fooling with a ham radio set or a wheel or an amateur telescope, smiling a little sheepish and proud when their wives come out to look at what they went and made. The war hasn't busted us up, mister. Flying war schedules now instead of peace schedules. But our clock isn't stopping, or even missing a tick.
So a voyage is a passage through time and space that adds to the dignity of man. I think that says it. Good night, Americans.
We approach the new year. America must be prepared to take her place of leadership in the air age, so much of which Pan American has already pioneered. Pan American pioneered from scratch the development of long-range transport planes. Pan American pioneered the fully equipped life-saving raft, the kind that saved Rickenbacker. Pan American pioneered engines completely accessible in flight, self-sufficient multiple crews, long-range aerial navigation. That's why on December 7th, America had the world's greatest system of air transport. Pan American's leadership typifies the vision, patience, perseverance, and determination which must inspire us on to victory. For Pan American has always built not in pace with, but ahead of the times. And victory today is closer because of just such pioneering. Ladies and gentlemen, Lockheed and Vega are proud not only that Lockheed planes are in the service of Pan American, but proud, too, to have brought you a portion of the story of one of America's greatest transportation pioneers. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
This is Orson Welles, speaking from London. A black museum. A repository of crime, of death by violence. Here in the bleak stone structure which is Scotland Yard, there is a warehouse of souvenirs. where ordinary objects, a briar-root pipe, a dingy white glove, a lump of twisted sealing wax, all have a history of murder. This length of sash cord is quite commonplace. You might see something like this in any window frame.
Harmless-looking bit of rope.
It seems so. Frayed at one end, cut all cleanly at the other.
Just the right length to hook around a man's neck and twist.
Today, that bit of sash cord can be seen in the Black Museum.
From the annals of the Criminal Investigation Department of the London Police, we bring you the dramatic stories of the crimes recorded by the objects in Scotland Yard's Gallery of Death, the Black Museum.
Here we are in the Black Museum, Scotland Yard's Museum of Murder. Outside these walls of blackened brick and slate is London, where since daybreak the river has borne an endless burden of traffic. On fog-shrouded bridges and in narrow streets, tens of thousands of pedestrians have jostled one another, all very much alive. But here, within this room, the connoisseurs of crime may see recorded for posterity in cabinets, in wooden trays, in jars, carefully labeled and preserved, the evidence of vindictive death. This sash cord, short piece of rope, grimy, frayed at one end, not remarkable in itself, yet it came from the stage of a famous theater in the city of Brighton, where Octavia Kenmore, actress-manager, was concluding her annual engagement. The alley of that theater was like any other, a corridor of darkness between the street and the stage door. And one September evening, a man came running out of the shadows, startling the doorkeeper who sat dozing in his chair.
Mr. Carter, what's the trouble, sir?
You'll find out soon enough. Operator, St. John Carter here, Mercury Theatre. Send an ambulance quickly. There's been an accident. One of our stagehands, he's lying unconscious in the alley. Hurry, please. Yes.
One of the cast, Mr. Carter? Who is it? Tell me.
It's Buckland. I can't bring him round. I tried.
Chef Buckland? Oh, Miss Kenmore will be terribly distressed. Stage carpenter with her for 20 years.
I dare say she will.
Hadn't we better go and lift him in, sir? Perhaps there's something could be done.
No, it's better not to move him till the doctor comes. It may be serious. We wouldn't want to injure him, you know.
A man found dead or dying. A phone call. Then the waiting. Over the crumpled figure stood old Tom Snellen, doorkeeper, and St. John Carter, leading man, waiting. Waiting until an ambulance drew up and an intern came to kneel beside Jeff Buckland.
Which one of you called us?
I did.
You said the man was unconscious.
Well, it looked to me. I'm no physician.
This man's dead. Shot through the heart. You'd have done much better to have called the police.
The police arrived, and actors, coming into the evening performance, were questioned. The star of the play in the theater early, as was her custom, was left undisturbed. The constable at the door admitted a young plainclothesman.
Inspector Mitchell?
Yes, Jordan?
One of the men found this, sir. Hidden under some rubbish in the alley. .32 caliber.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Ellis.
Attention now focused on David Ellis, stage manager in Miss Kenmore's troupe.
Ever seen this pistol, Mr. Ellis?
Why, yes, it's the one we use in the play. I keep it in my desk. I've the usual license for it.
What sort of ammunition do you have?
Oh, blank cartridges, of course. 32 blanks.
It's not loaded with blanks now. Bullets. And one chamber has been fired. I must warn you, Ellis. Anything you say henceforth will be written down and may be used as evidence.
What? You mean you're arresting Dave? But you can't. He never hurt anyone.
Who are you, young lady?
Miss Kenmore's secretary.
My wife, Inspector. Please, Lucy.
But this is... Oh, Inspector, you don't understand. Jeff was our friend. He's been... well, like a father to both of us. And while you stand here wasting time, the real murderer's getting farther away.
That will do, Lucy.
I take it there's been some trouble. Please, sir, state your business and then leave. I can't have my theatre disrupted 15 minutes before curtain time.
Oh, Miss Kenmore.
Now, Lucy, control yourself. Will someone be good enough to tell me what has happened?
Certainly, Miss Kenmore. I had hoped it wouldn't be necessary to disturb you just at present. But one of your stage hands, Mr. Buckland, was found this evening outside...
Octavia Kenmore, distinguished actress manager, darling of the provinces. Equally adept at comedy or tragedy.
Of course, I'm gravely shocked. Poor Mr. Buckland. A good and faithful servant, Inspector. Oh, but it is preposterous of you to suspect Mr. Ellis. My stage managers never kill people. In any case, I can't spare him. We ring up in 10 minutes exactly.
I'm extremely sorry, Miss Kenmore, but Ellis is a material witness. He must come to the station house for further questioning. It was his pistol
It was my pistol. I own all the props used in my play.
The license is in his name. Legally, he is the owner.
Then I demand that you release him in my personal recognizance.
I'd like to do that, ma'am, but unfortunately your entire company is under surveillance and is only permitted to perform tonight. Ellis, you must come with me.
Very well. Go with them, David. Lucy and I will be down to see you. And the inspector, as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you, Miss Kenmore.
The police left the theater, except for certain constables on duty at the door. And in her dressing room, Octavia Kenmore made ready.
Lucy, my child. Ah, me. How weak a thing the heart of woman is. Come. Don't be downcast.
Oh, how can I help it, Miss Kenmore? With David in prison.
Nonsense. He's only detained for questioning. He isn't charged with any crime. I'm thinking of Geoffrey Buckland, an excellent good man, and the best stage carpenter there was in England.
Was he married?
His family's in Manchester. I'll have to telephone them immediately after the performance.
What? You really mean you're going on?
Certainly I am. And you will do Davy's job tonight.
What? Me? Run the show?
Why not? You've seen Davy do it often enough. And work is what you need. There's no time to think. Now, quickly now. Check the stage for the first scene and while I repair my makeup. Go, my child.
Smoothly, the curtain rose and fell as the actors took their calls. Lucy Ellis, listening to the applause, realized suddenly she was quite calm and self-possessed. But her composure was nothing to that of Octavia Kenmore. She descended on the police station not many minutes later.
Ah, Miss Kenmore and Mrs. Ellis. Come in, won't you?
I am in, Inspector. Now, I expect a full explanation of what you have accomplished by imprisoning my employee these past 2 hours.
Please sit down, ladies. There's plenty of time.
Is there? I expect to leave Brighton tomorrow night, taking my stage manager with me.
Is he all right, Inspector?
He's not in chains or even in a dungeon, Mrs. Ellis. In fact, he's quite comfortable.
Oh, thank heavens for that.
If you will both be seated, madam.
Since you insist. Thank you, Inspector. Well, have you nothing to tell us about this case?
I'm waiting at the moment for our pathologist's report.
Of course.
Yes, routine police procedure.
Well, the man's been shot. That was quite obvious.
The bullet is important, particularly in court, to establish the actual weapon.
It seemed to me the hand that fired the weapon is a more important consideration.
Eventually, Miss Kenmore, and inevitably, I trust, we'd like to know more about Buckland's background, his habits. Did he drink, for example?
Despite the general opinion, there are many in the theatrical profession who are not addicted to alcohol, Inspector. Mr. Buckland was a decent man.
Octavia Kenmore told the truth about the murdered man, a non-drinker, except for an occasional pint of bitter after the show, a devoted family man in an occupation where family relationships are often difficult to maintain. There was nothing to indicate a motive for murder.
In all the years with me, I have never known him to miss a single performance. He was a craftsman who could rig and handle any production, heavy or light. With him on the job, my stage managers had an easy time of it. Everyone liked him. His only fault, perhaps, was that he was too loyal to me.
We're not being much help to you, are we, Inspector?
Oh, yes. You've helped to fill in the picture. I've learned a lot.
Oh? What have you learned?
2 important things, Miss Kenmore. First, that Buckland was not a man who made enemies. All my reports bear this out. And also that he was extremely devoted to you.
You think that's significant?
Extremely. You keep a close rein in your company. You should know of any jealousies or quarrels that occurred.
I'd know about them, yes.
I'm sure of that. You're not the person to tolerate friction or even bad habits in members of your troop. Come in.
Pathology report, Inspector. I knew you wanted right away.
Thank you. Yes. Well, this is interesting. Why wasn't I told of this before?
You know what they're like in the lab, Inspector. They wanted to be sure. Absolutely sure.
I see. Miss Kenmore, can you think of a reason why anyone should want to shoot a dead man?
Well, hardly. A useless procedure.
It seems so. Still, it happened. Apparently, Buckland was dead of strangulation before he was shot.
Today, the instrument of that murder, a piece of sash cord, can be found in the Black Museum. It is a good question. Inspector Mitchell repeated it.
Can you think of a reason why anyone should want to shoot a dead man?
An interesting problem, is it not?
The medical report is very definite. Buckland was strangled with a thin piece of rope. Because he wore a scarf about his neck, the marks weren't noticed till they brought him to the lab. He was dead before the bullet ever was fired.
Inspector Mitchell then went back to the scene of the crime, the alley beside the theater where the body of Jeffrey Buckland had been found. And with him, at her own insistence, went Octavia Kenmore.
What are they looking for, Miss Kenmore?
The thin piece of rope, of course. They'll never find it. If the murderer had an ounce of brains, he'll have taken it with him.
Oh, it's strange. I don't suppose this alley ever had so much light turned onto it before.
It was strange. Men searching every cranny, their flashlights pointing and probing, picking out grillwork balconies, iron ladders, and fire escapes thick with rust. The men themselves silhouetted against the light.
Oh, Miss Kenmore?
Yes?
We found this, caught up in that balustrade. I think it's the weapon. Our lab can tell us definitely, of course.
I see. A piece of lash line.
What's that? Lash line, did you say?
Yes, it's the sort of rope we use backstage to lash the scenery together.
Much the same as ordinary clothesline?
Or sash cord, yes.
Would you be able to identify it as belonging to your stage equipment?
Oh, that's hard to say.
Miss Kenmore, Inspector.
Yes, Lucy?
One of the stagehands reported to me tonight. They'd had trouble with one of the sets. The line was too short to make it fast.
Could you locate that piece of scenery, Mrs. Ellis?
I think so. I told him to leave it on top of the stack so that we could replace it in the morning.
Well, let's go on stage then, shall we? Do you know, Miss Kenmore, as a youth, I was strongly attracted to the theater.
Were you indeed, Inspector Mitchell?
They moved through the stage door onto the platform.
This is the flat, the one with the short lash line.
You see how it works, Inspector. The rope is flipped round the iron cleats and tied off at the bottom, so the audience sees only an unbroken wall.
I understand perfectly. The cord of this rope matches the piece found in the alley, rust, stains, and all.
What does that suggest to you, Inspector?
There's little doubt in my mind, Miss Kenmore, that the person we want is a member of your own company.
Yes, I've decided that for myself some time
ago.
A
member of your company, I think, cut off this cordage to strangle Buckland, and someone else, familiar with these premises, took the pistol from Ellis's desk.
Then you don't think my husband's guilty?
I haven't said that. But I must check once more who actually was here, backstage, between the hours of 6 and 7.
I was here myself in my dressing room, and Sneller, the doorkeeper, was on duty. He surely
We took his statement, of course. He seemed a bit evasive now that I think of it.
I won't hear a word against him. Sneller's perfectly honest. I take an oath on it.
Is he? A remarkably sound sleeper all the same?
What do you mean?
The extraordinary thing about his story, he claims to have been dozing in his chair. He didn't wake even when a pistol was fired not 30 feet away. I think perhaps I'd better go and visit him.
Then I'll come...
No, Miss Kenmore, not this trip. Investigations of this kind are sometimes dangerous.
The old man lived close by the theater. 4 flights of well-worn steps led to an attic door.
What do you want? What is it?
You're Mr. Snellen?
I am.
We're the police. My name is Mitchell, C.I.D. Should I show you my credentials?
No, I recognize you, sir. Come inside.
John Snellen had no need to be afraid, but it was his nature to be timid. Merely an old man who wanted to avoid trouble. Sometimes when arguments occurred, it was his habit to pretend to be asleep in his cubbyhole behind the stage door.
You expect me to believe that when a pistol was fired close by you, you didn't even hear it?
I can't rightly say this. There's heavy traffic in the street that time of night, you know. If I did hear a noise, I must have took it for a passing car.
Yes, I'll admit that's a likely explanation.
Perhaps I ought to.
Yes, what is it? If there's something you haven't told us, I advise you to come out with it.
What had he seen and heard? A trifle. But possibly a trifle of importance. Almost enough to send a man to the gallows.
I know I should have spoke of it before, sir, but, well, it was a little before 7 o'clock, and Mr. Buckland was inside near his toolbox talking to this flashy-dressed young fella. And Mr. St. John Carter, he was there too, just standing by, so to speak.
Could you hear what they were saying?
No bookmaking in this house. That was what Buckland said. Miss Kenmore won't stand for it.
She's strict about such things.
Yes, sir. Everyone knows that. Miss Kenmore won't have gambling in her company. An actor would get himself discharged if she caught him betting the horses or some such thing.
What else did Buckland say?
Well, he warned the fellow he'd go straight to Miss Kenmore. He said how this man had been following the company all along the tour, and Carter and some of the others had been betting with him. But that was all. 3 of them went out together, still talking.
And that was the last you saw of him alive?
Yes, sir, it was. And Mr. Carter, sir, it struck me at the time. He came back a little later. Went up to his dressing room, I guess, and then went right out again. But he seemed so cheerful and high-spirited. I thought the gentlemen must have settled their differences all right.
Carter didn't come back again till he found Buckland's body and called the ambulance.
That's right, sir.
It begins to make sense, Inspector.
Begins to, yes. But why the stage manager's gun? And why shoot a dead man? Why?
Why indeed? Why steal a gun to shoot a dead man? Hoping to find the answer to this question, the inspector went to Brighton jail to call on David Ellis.
Look here, Inspector, why are you holding me without a shred of evidence? Won't I be permitted to travel with the company when they leave tonight?
It all depends.
On what?
Your replies to a few questions.
Ask them by all means.
How much gambling goes on in the company?
Not a great deal. Some of the actors bet a few shillings now and then. Actually, their salaries are so small they can't afford to be reckless.
Does Miss Kenmore know about it?
Not a chance. If she did, we'd have replacements in a matter of minutes.
It would follow, then, that an actor who wanted to keep his job would be careful that such information never reached Miss Kenmore.
Oh, I'd certainly say so.
Is there anyone in the company who needed that job badly?
What do you mean, badly enough to commit murder?
Yes.
I doubt it. Of course, you never know. In troops like this one, most of the supporting cast are either on the way up or down. A dismissal might mean the end of a career.
Ellis, has anyone a reason for wanting you out of the way?
No. Why? Whatever for?
That gun was stolen from your desk, loaded with live ammunition, and after the murder it was left where we'd be sure to find it and hold you responsible.
Oh, I can't believe that anyone would do a thing like that. Unless...
Unless?
No, Inspector, there really isn't anyone.
Indeed? Well, there is, though. No matter how clumsily he may have gone about it, I can't help feeling that our murderer has tried to pin his crime on you. For the moment, I'm going to let him think he's succeeded.
How did he do that?
By keeping you locked safely up here in jail.
A short time later, Inspector Mitchell was admitted to Miss Kenmore's suite at the Shorefront Hotel.
Any progress to report, Inspector?
Not much, I'm afraid.
Have you been to see David?
I have. I left him in the best of health.
Well, why are you holding him? David didn't kill anyone. You know that as well as I do.
I'm afraid I don't know it. I've met many murderers in my time, Mrs. Ellis. Most of them look quite as innocent as your husband. Besides, I have a hunch he could be somewhat more cooperative.
In what way?
Tell me, is there anything you know of that your husband might be concealing? Or some, well, mistaken idea of gallantry? Something perhaps concerning you?
Why, no, I hardly think so.
I seem to remember a melodramatic little scene I accidentally walked in on.
Oh, but that was nothing. Just because St. John Carter made some advances to me, and David resented it.
Oh. That may be more important than you think, Mrs. Ellis. In fact, it may be the piece of information
Inspector Mitchell thought that he knew the killer at last. But it takes evidence to bring a man to court. Then Miss Kenmore made a helpful suggestion.
You said you were a devotee of the theatre, Inspector Mitchell.
I am indeed, ma'am.
Did you by any chance see me as Lady Teazle?
I did. A most marvelous performance.
Then you recall, of course, the third act. I have something of that
A crucial moment in a famous play, when standing behind a screen, the lady overheard a villain's treachery exposed. Such a dramatic device as might be used effectively offstage as well as on. At the theater before the matinee, the acting out began.
Oh, St. John, may I see you a minute?
Of course, Lucy, my dear. Not given up hope for Dave, I trust?
No, not at all.
That's the proper spirit. Still, I understand we're leaving Brighton without him.
Please, I'd rather not discuss it.
Perhaps in his absence you won't mind so much my paying you little attentions. Like the old days, eh?
St. John, Miss Kenmore's waiting. She wants to see you at once.
Really? The great Miss Kenmore? That sounds ominous.
It is. She's breathing fire and brimstone.
Is she? And it so happens I come from a long line of fire-eaters. Lead the way, my girl.
Octavia Kenmore was seated at her makeup table. Behind her, the tiny dressing room was crowded with trunks and props and costumes. In an alcove, hardly noticed, there stood a screen.
Here he is, Miss Kenmore.
So I can see, yes.
Hello, what's the long face about? Nothing to do with me, I'm sure.
You've been placing bets on the races, Mr. Carter.
Oh?
Therefore, I'm compelled to dispense with your services. Here's your check and return fare to London. Your understudy will replace you at the matinee.
See here, you can't do this. I have a contract.
This check covers the terms of your contract.
Miss Kenmore, whoever told you this was lying?
A man in danger of his life seldom lies.
If Ellis made this accusation...
No, David. Your friend. Your flashily dressed friend who admits to bookmaking. And may shortly admit to murder.
Oh, so Morgan has squealed, has he?
If that's the word, yes. I gather is ready to implicate you.
You try. That kind always does. He did the killing. He can't drag me into
I'm
this.
afraid you're already implicated quite seriously, Mr. Carter, and by your own words and actions.
Oh, well, Inspector Mitchell, isn't it? What sort of game is this?
The glorious game of play acting.
Congratulations, Miss Kenmore. A very successful little playlet.
You haven't got anything you can prove.
No use bluffing. You took the pistol, didn't you, from Ellis's desk and shot Buckland with it.
I didn't kill him. He was dead before.
You are under arrest, Mr. Carter, and charged with willful murder.
It wasn't me, I tell you. Morgan choked him with that bit of rope when Buckland threatened him with the police. Morgan had no license and a previous record, too. It would have been jail for him. He did it, and after that
Yes, you thought quickly. You tried to take advantage of the situation to frame Ellis so the field would be clear with his wife.
No.
No, Carter, you may not have killed anyone, but you are an accessory after the fact, and you did put a bullet through a man's heart. A delicate question for the jury to decide, but I predict you'll pay the penalty. Come along now, and come quietly.
Today, that piece of sash cord, properly marked and ticketed, lies in a glass case in the Black Museum. People of the theater can be, and most often are, fiercely loyal to one another. Octavia Kenmore was such a person, an actress-manager who accepted responsibility not only for her company's professional welfare, but for their personal happiness as well. St. John Carter was an exception to the rule. But then his career had an exceptional ending, taking his final bow as he did on a platform 13 steps high at 8 o'clock one winter evening. Well, the murder weapon is on exhibit for all to admire in the famous room at Scotland Yard. And now, until we meet here again for another story from the Black Museum, I remain, as always, obediently yours.
Welcome, one and all, to the sign of the Flying Red Horse. The makers of Mobil Gas and Mobil Oil bring you your Radio Almanac with Orson Welles.
To
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orson Welles. If you'll excuse me, I'd like to say just a word to our studio audience. Folks, I know our listeners won't mind if you interrupt this program occasionally for hearty laughter. You will, I know you will. If you don't, I'll tell the OPA how you got here. A lot of our listeners, a lot of our listeners don't know that live people come to these broadcasts. That's where we get the expression, a live audience. A live or studio audience is a group of people who are out apartment hunting and who just happen to be passing here when their feet hurt. Oh, I'd appreciate it if you don't spread this around, but a cousin of mine on my mother's side has a brother-in-law who knows a girl who goes out with a fella who prints for rent signs. And he's been mopping up lately with a little special he's got, says no vacancy. Well, this fellow who prints signs tipped me off about an ad that was in the papers. Here it is. For rent, lovely 10-room furnished house, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, den, patio, swimming pool, lovely residential district, near transportation, $50 a month. Now, if anyone's interested, I'd be glad to give it to them after the broadcast. It appeared in the Los Angeles Times, April 3rd, 1934. I only mention this because I've been looking for a place myself. I nearly had a place yesterday. I answered all the questions. She asked me if I had any dogs or cats. I said no. She asked me if I had any children. I said no. And she said, good, let's keep it that way. And I've heard folks say it's very simple to find a place to live out here if you know the why and wherefore. I don't know about the wherefore. I'm living at the why. That is, I was until this morning. This morning I said to Gristlehorn. Gristlehorn is the man who takes care of my rabbits when I do a magic show. I said, Gristlehorn, but perhaps we'd better show you just what happened.
Here we are at last, Mr. Wells.
What page are you on? Well, thanks anyway, Lud Gluskin, for the lovely mood music. Oh, this is Lud Gluskin, everybody, looking bright and shiny. Just had his head Simonized for Easter. Lud Gluskin, everybody. I think you might greet him. And now... Now back to the script. All right, Gristlehorn, you've just got to find an apartment for me.
Well, what's wrong with the apartment you had last week? The one with all the modern improvements? Why, it even had an electric eye that opened the kitchen window.
Yes, but one night the darn thing got nearsighted and opened the bathroom door. Was I embarrassed? Standing there washing my bobby socks. So it was, ladies and gentlemen, that Gristlehorn and I went apartment hunting. Just by chance, I happened to run out of gas, mobile gas, in front of a real estate office. Now, I opened the door, walked in, and said, how do you do? I'd like to rent an apartment.
I'd like to kiss Hedy Lamarr, but where does that get us?
I don't know about you. It'd get me in quite a jam. How about houses? Do you have any houses to rent?
Yes, here's something nice. Lovely 10-room furnished house, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, $50 a month.
That sounds great. Where is it?
916 Elm Street, Yuma, Arizona.
Have you got anything more convenient? Say, within walking distance of breakfast at Sardi's.
No, the last thing I had, I rented an hour ago. You wouldn't have wanted it. A broken-down clapboard shack I had in my hands for 10 years. No plumbing, gas lighting, and the roof leaks.
Yeah. Like to see that guy's face when he moves in.
Yeah. I got $200 a month for it. The fellow gave me a $50 bonus.
He did?
Yeah, some sucker by the name of Gristlehorn.
Well, I guess we better go right on to the next scene.
Well, here we are at last, Mr. Wells.
You finally got the right page, I think. Well, Mr. Wells...
Mr. Wells, here's the house.
Well, that's your line. We've both got the right page. Let's divvy up on the parts. I'll play well.
Here's the house,
To
Mr.
win.
Wells. Here's the house. How do you like it?
Looks like a hideout for Mrs. Pruneface.
But, Mr. Wells, the rental agent assured me that this place was only 15 years old.
15 years old. Look at those 2 hearts carved on the porch.
Well, that only means a couple of lovers with spooning.
Yeah, but look what it says. John Smith, I love you. Signed, Pocahontas. Let's go in. Did you see that, Gristlehorn?
Oh, it was nothing, just a little mouse.
A little mouse. It ran out with my suitcase. Let's look the place over. What are those sawdust trails all over my front lawn?
Oh, your next-door neighbor, Jack Benny, sprinkles that sawdust from his house to this house every morning.
Oh, what for?
He sends his termites over here for breakfast.
I wish he sent over a couple of his writers. I really shouldn't have said that. No, my writers work like beavers. As a matter of fact, 2 of them are beavers. Wish I could figure out which 2. I'll talk to him. Get me Crestview 92911. Sprinkle sawdust over my... Hello? Moe's Delicatessen? Will you please run around the corner and call Jack Benny the phone? Oh, he's there now? Thank you. Hello, Mr. Benny. This is Orson Welles, your new next-door neighbor. I wonder, could you lend me a lawnmower? Well, yes, it is necessary. You see, the grass is so high your termites can't follow the sawdust trail. Well, then you send it right over? Yes, I understand. 25 cents an hour. Thank you.
Say, Mr. Wells, just come over here and look at this master bedroom. The agent told me that this bed belonged to Whistler's mother.
Let's see what it feels like. Now I know why she always sits on that rocker. Gristlehorn, this place depresses me. It's so dark and dreary.
Well, at least you've got a roof over your head. Knock wood.
Sunny in here, isn't it?
Remember the good old days when you used to drive into a gas station and say, sort of careless, fill her up? Well, today you say, please, mister, give me what's coming to me and tear that coupon gently. Gasoline. Boy, it's a fabulous fluid these days. So now what matters most is mileage. Every gallon of your gasoline has got to spread the miles out thin as paper. That's where Mobile Gas comes in. Mobile Gas, the nation's favorite. Mobile Gas today is giving all the miles it gave in peacetime. All the miles you got in peacetime. In the making, Mobile Gas is balanced just so. It will make a ration coupon do its utmost. That's why Mobile Gas gets around, down to the store and out on the state road and heavy traffic on your way to work. Try it. Try this mileage-packing gasoline. You know where to find it. At the sign of the Flying Red Horse.
Master?
Yes, what is it?
There's a young man here who wants to see you.
Excuse me, please. I have a lawnmower for Mr. Wells from Jack Benny. Sign here.
What do you know? It's Dennis Day.
Will somebody take this lawnmower off my back?
Why, certainly.
Thank you. Say, which one of you two is Orson Welles?
Well, I'm Orson Welles.
Glad to know you, kid. Well, here I am, ready to start. What do you want me to do?
What do I want you to do?
Yeah, don't you remember? You won me from Mr. Benny in a crap game.
Oh, I did? I must have been using Rochester's dice. Dennis, how... I'm sorry I said that now. Sorry I said that about Rochester, and I'm sorry I said it. Dennis, how can you allow that man to make a chattel of you? How can you allow him to make a chattel of you, to put you up on the auction block and to toy with your very life?
Oh, you have no idea what a jerk I am. What's a chattel?
Dennis, you'd better start mowing the lawn.
What? Me mow the lawn? Nothing doing. I'm a chattel. Gee, I hope it's not dirty.
Dennis, all I want you to do is to cut the grass.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wells. I gotta go now. I've got a date.
A date? What's a date, Dennis? After all, what is a woman? A rag, a bone, a hank of hair?
No use. I gotta have a talk with this kid.
Now, what I mean, Dennis, in Hollywood, beautiful girls are a dime a dozen.
If that's the ceiling price, I'll take 8 cents worth.
Look, Dennis, if you do a good job on my lawn, I'll arrange a date for you. You've heard of Betty Hutton, haven't you?
Oh, sure. I once worked in a picture with Betty Hutton. She's a nice girl, very cooperative. I like her attitude.
Her longitude isn't bad either.
Ooh, what he said.
Oh, come now, Dennis. Really, you're old enough to be thinking about girls, settling down, getting married.
Oh, I can't get married now.
Why not?
My mother hasn't finished shellacking my hope chest. But, Mr. Wells, there's just one thing I'd like to ask you.
Excuse me, Dennis. I was just looking up in that window.
Where? Oh, not bad.
I'll say.
That's Mr. Benny, you know.
What'd you spoil it for? I'm nearsighted. Come on, Dennis. You mow the lawn now, and I promise you there'll be something in it for you.
Really? What?
All the gophers you find, you can keep.
Oh, boy, you've got a deal, Mr. Wells.
Good. Where's my secretary, Miss Grimmett?
Here I am, Mr. Wells, and I'm quitting.
Quitting? Oh, Miss Grimmett, you can't do this to me. You're the best secretary I ever had.
I didn't want to be a secretary. You told me you'd get me in the movies. You promised me a part in your next picture.
Well, Miss Grimmett, the feminine lead in my next production calls for... They're laughing at the thought that I'll have a next picture. Well, Miss Grimmett, the feminine lead in my next production calls for a young person.
Really, Mr. Wells? There's nothing wrong with my figure. And it has been said that I have the face of a girl of 20.
She's going to be awfully upset when she sees what you've done to her.
What did you say?
Nothing at all. I was just thinking maybe I can give you this part providing you stay on as my secretary.
Oh, Mr. Wells, I'm so happy. What is the part like?
Well, here's the script. I'll go over it with you. You enact the role of a woman betrayed. Let's try the scene where the man returns. You hear his footsteps now. Go ahead.
All right. Who's there? Oh, it's you. So you've come back. A lot you cared about me. I gave you my love, my kisses, my all.
Yes, I've come... Now, wait a minute, Miss Grimmett. Do you have to talk through your left nostril?
I'm creating a character, Mr. Wells.
Does that sound dramatic or romantic?
For what you can about me. I gave you my love, my kisses, my all.
You sound like a female Fred Allen.
I can't help it if I talk through one nostril.
Neither can Fred Allen. Yes, you can. Now try it. Try it again and give it to me with both barrels. Our marriage was a farce, a cruel jest. That's my line. I'm sorry.
Don't change the subject. You took everything from me. My youth, my beauty.
I never would have believed it.
So I've changed that much, have I? Oh, how could you go and leave me when I was expecting a baby?
Now, please, Miss Grimmett, please. This man left you when you were expecting a baby. Read it that way, not like you were expecting a floor mop from Bullock's basement. Let me read it for you. Now, listen.
Oh, Mr. Wells.
Don't bother me now, Grisselhorn. Listen to me, Grimmett. How could you go and leave me when I was expecting a baby?
Master, I'm so happy for you. Congratulations.
Get out of here, Grisselhorn. Look, Miss Grimmett, please. Please, the character you're playing is a vicious woman. You know, wild, mean, a troublemaker, like the character of Iago in Othello. Now, go ahead. Let's hear you play it like Iago.
I'll go to your mother. I'll tell your father. I'll shout it from the rooftop. Ah!
I said Iago, not Umbriago. Now, this is the scene where you pull the gun on him and your father comes running out. Miss Grimmett, you've got to prove to me that you can play it convincingly. I'll be in the house.
I must get this part. I just must. I'll show him I can play it convincingly. I'll just try it again. Who's there? Oh, it's you. So you've come back.
Who, me?
I always knew you'd come back. Where have you been?
Right over here, mowing the lawn.
Don't change the subject. You took everything from me. My youth, my beauty.
I did? Look, I never saw you before in my life.
I've changed that much, have I? Oh, how could you go and leave me when I was expecting a baby?
That's impossible. Mr. Benny says I'm not even married. And besides, I'm a chattel.
Don't deny it. There's only one thing for me to do. I'll go to your mother.
Oh, don't tell my mother. She's still mad at me for wearing her slacks.
Very well, then. I'll tell your father.
Oh, you leave him alone. He's got enough trouble with my mother.
Don't move.
Oh, my goodness, a gun.
I'll take care of you, you fiend, you.
Lady, please, if you put a hole in Mr. Benny's lawnmower, I'll have to pay for it.
What's going on here?
Father?
I hate him. I tried to kill him.
That's it, Miss Grimmett. Good. That's the way to play the part. So, young man, what have you got to say for yourself?
She says we're married and got a baby, and I don't even remember. I worry about things like that.
He was a wretch, Father. He always thought only of himself, telling me he loved me, while he went out with one chorus girl after another.
It gets around, don't it?
Dennis, we were just rehearsing a play. Nice work, Miss Grimmett. You've got the part.
Thanks, Mr. Wells.
You mean she's not your father and I haven't got a baby and I'm not married to her?
Of course not, Dennis.
Oh, shucks. Now I have to give back all the wedding presents.
March 17th, with St. Patrick's Day, Dennis, that broth of a boy, will now sing Bésame Mucho.
Bésame, bésame mucho. Each time I cling to your kiss, I hear music divine. Bésame mucho. Hold me, my darling, and say that you'll always be mine. This joy is something new, my arms enfolding you. Never knew this thrill before. Whoever thought I'd be holding you close to me, whispering it's you I am, and make all my dreams come
Dennis, those poor little pipes. Gosh, they need spring cleaning. Chances are they're corroded with rust, clogged with deposits. 6 months' worth. Now, that can slow up circulation, cause your engine to overheat, and waste your gasoline. Yes, I mean the pipes in your car's radiator. And they really need attention. So do this. Drive a shortcut to your mobile gas dealer and have him flush that radiator clean with Mobile Radiator Flush. Here's the product that really does the job. Mobile Radiator Flush scours every tiny tube. Scale and rust deposits loosen up and drain off easily. Your radiator will be clean as new. Then have that friendly mobile gas man pour in Mobile Hydrotone. 1 bottle works to stall off fresh corrosion for long months to come. Mobile Radiator Flush and Mobile Hydrotone. There's the team you want to keep your pipes, your radiator pipes, in good condition. So, stop in, Dennis, at the sign of the Flying Red Horse.
Thanks, Tom. John, rather. And thank you, Dick and Harry. Dennis, I suppose you too use mobile gas?
Oh, sure. I have a big bowl of it every morning with my grape nuts.
All right. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you very much for coming to see us. Hand for Dennis, please, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for applauding again. I thank you for Dennis, and I thank you for me because I had to find my place. Ladies and gentlemen, you wrote us so many nice letters about the Shakespeare we did a few weeks back. Tonight we're going to bring you a little more of the same. The play is Hamlet.
Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, learning that his father has been murdered by his uncle, the present king, cannot decide how to expose his uncle's crimes. Strolling players have come to court, and Hamlet hears them rehearse a scene. The soliloquy Mr. Wells will read us now comes after their departure, when the young prince is left by himself in the throne room.
Now I'm alone. Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I. Is it not monstrous that this player here, but in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit that from a working all his visage wan, tears in his eyes, distraction in suspect, a broken voice, and his whole function suiting with forms to his conceit, and all for nothing for Hecuba. What's Hecuba to him, or he to Hecuba, that he should weep for her? What would he do had he the motive and the cue for passion that I have? Why, he would drown the stage with tears and cleave the general ear with horrid speech, make mad the guilty and appall the free, confound the ignorant, and amaze indeed the very faculties of eyes and ears. Yet I, A dull and muddy, metalled rascal. Peak like John a dream. Unpregnant of my cause. And can say nothing. No, not for a king, upon whose property and most dear life a damned defeat was made. Am I a coward? Who called me villain? Breaks my pate across, plucks off my beard and blows it in my face, tweaks me by the nose, gives me the line as deep as the throat. How does me this? Soon I should take it, for it cannot be that I am pigeon-livered and lack gall to make oppression bitter. For ere this, I should have fatted all the region kites with a slave's offal. Bloody, bawdy villain. Remorseless, treacherous, lecherous, kindless villain. Ah! Vengeance! What an ass am I. This is most brave. That I, the son of a dear father murdered, prompted to my revenge by heaven and hell, should, like a whore, unpack my heart with words and fall a-cursing like a very drab scullion. Firepot. Ha! About my brain. I have heard that guilty creatures, sitting at a play, have by the very cunning of the scene been struck so to the soul that presently they have proclaimed their malefactions. For murder, though it have no tongue, will speak with most miraculous organ. I'll have these players play something like the murder of my father before mine uncle. I'll observe his looks. I'll tempt him to the quick. If he but blench, I know my course. The spirit that I've seen may be the devil. And the devil has power to assume a pleasing shape. Yes, and perhaps out of my weakness and my melancholy, abuses me to damn me. I'll have grounds more relative than this. Plays the thing, wherein I'll catch the conscience. The king. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Time to say good night now. Speaking for all of us in the Mercury Theater and for our sponsors, the makers of mobile gas and mobile oil, I'd like to say, as always, that we remain, as always, obediently yours.
Makers of mobile gas and mobile oil invite you to listen in next week, same time, same station, to your Radio Almanac. Mr. Wells' guest is Monty Woolley. Dennis Day appears to the courtesy of Jack Benny and is now starring in the RKO production Cocktails for Two. John McIntyre speaking. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Wonderful to be famous. According to the story, that's what the young lady said to the fat man, the fabulously fat, the fantastic, the famous fat man, when he took her to lunch at a fashionable restaurant and everybody turned and stared. Tell me, she said, Do people always recognize you? Does everybody always know who you are? Well, my dear, said Mr. Chesterton, if they don't, they ask. Mr. Chesterton's The Man Who Was Thursday is a little like that. Roughly speaking, it's about anarchists. It was written, remember, in the boom of bomb-throwing in those radical, irresponsible days of the nihilists. And roughly speaking, it's a mystery story. It can be guaranteed that you will never guess the solution until you get to the end. It is even feared that you may not guess it then. You may never guess what The Man Who Was Thursday is about, but definitely, if you don't, you'll ask. I am Gabriel Syme. I am the man who was Thursday. That particular evening, if it is remembered for nothing else, will be remembered in that place for its strange sunset. It looked like the end of the world. It may be remembered by others, too, because it marked the first appearance in the place of the second poet of Saffron Park. For a long time, a red-haired revolutionary had reigned without a rival. It was upon the night of the sunset that I, Gabriel Syme, ended his solitude.
Mr. Syme, you say you are a poet of law. I say you are a contradiction in terms. An artist is identical with an anarchist.
Mr. Gregory, it is things going right that is poetical. Our digestions, for instance, going sacredly and silently right. The most poetical thing in the world is not being sick.
Really, Mr. Syme, the examples you choose...
I beg your pardon, Mr. Gregory. I forgot we had abolished all conventions.
You don't expect me to revolutionize society on this lawn?
Oh, no, I don't, but I suppose that if you were serious about your anarchism, that is exactly what you would do.
Don't you think, then, that I'm serious about my anarchism?
I beg your pardon.
Am I not serious about my anarchism?
I strolled away and left Gregory, but with surprise and with a curious pleasure, I found a red-headed young lady still in my company. It was Rosamond, Gregory's sister.
Mr. Syme, do the people who talk like you and my brother often mean what they say? Do you mean what you say now?
My dear Miss Gregory, when you say thank you for the salt, do you mean what you say? No. When you say the world is round, do you mean what you say? No, it's quite true, but you don't mean it.
Is he really an anarchist, then?
Only in that sense I speak of, or if you prefer it, in that nonsense.
He wouldn't really use bombs or that sort of thing.
Good Lord, no. That has to be done anonymously. I strolled with her to a seat in the corner of the garden, and I defended respectability with violence and exaggeration. I grew passionate in my praise of tidiness and propriety. All the time there was a smell of lilac around me, and once I heard, very faintly in some distant street, a barrel organ begin to play, and it seemed to me that my heroic words were moving to a tiny tune from under or beyond the world. In the wild events which were to follow, this girl had no part at all. I never saw her again until all my tale was over. And yet, in some indescribable way, she kept recurring like a motive in music through all those mad adventures afterwards. And the glory of her strange hair ran like a red thread through those dark and ill-drawn tapestries of the night. For what followed was so improbable that it might well have been a dream. When I left the party and went out into the starlit street, I found Gregory waiting for me.
Mr. Syme.
Mr. Gregory.
This evening you succeeded in doing something rather remarkable. You did something to me that no man has ever succeeded in doing before. You irritated me.
Oh, I'm very sorry.
There is only one way by which that insult can be erased, and that way I choose. I am going at the possible sacrifice of my life and honor to prove to you that you are wrong in what you said.
In what I said?
You said I was not serious about being an anarchist. Mr. Syme, may I ask you to swear by whatever gods or saints your religion involves that you will not reveal what I am now going to tell you to any son of Adam, and especially not to the police? Will you swear that? If you will consent to burden your soul with a vow that you should never make and a knowledge you should never dream about, I will promise you in return...
You will promise me in return...
I will promise you a very entertaining evening.
Your offer is far too idiotic to be declined. You say that a poet is always an anarchist. I disagree, but I hope at least that he is always a sportsman. Permit me here and now to swear that as a Christian, and to promise as a good comrade and a fellow artist, that I will not report any of this, whatever it is, to the police. And now, what is it?
I think that we will take a cab.
The cab pulled up before a particularly dreary and greasy beer shop. We seated ourselves in a close and dim sort of bar parlor at a stained wooden table with one wooden leg.
Mr. Syme, if in a few moments this table begins to turn around a little, please don't put it down to the champagne. I don't wish you to do yourself an injustice.
Well, if I'm not drunk, I'm mad, but I trust I can behave like a gentleman in either situation. May I smoke?
Certainly. Try one of mine.
I took the cigar and started to light it. Almost before I had begun, the table at which we were sitting began to revolve, first slowly and then rapidly.
You mustn't mind it. It's a kind of screw.
Quite so, a kind of screw. How simple that is. The next moment, we two, with our chairs and tables, shot down through the floor as if the earth had swallowed us. Gregory led me down a low, vaulted passage, at the end of which was a heavy iron door.
Who is it? Mr. Joseph Chamberlain.
It was obviously some kind of password. We stepped into a queer steel chamber whose walls were hung with dubious and dreadful shapes, things that looked like the bulbs of iron plants or the eggs of iron birds. They were bombs.
And now, my dear Mr. Syme, now we are quite cozy, so let us talk properly. You said you were quite certain I was not a serious anarchist. Does this place strike you as being serious?
It does seem to have a moral under all of its gaiety, but tell me, you have a heavy iron door. You cannot pass it without submitting to the humiliation of calling yourself Mr. Chamberlain. You surround yourself with steel instruments which make the place, if I may say so, more impressive and homelike. Why? After taking all this trouble to barricade yourself in the bowels of the earth, do you then parade your whole secret by talking anarchism to every silly woman in Saffron Park?
The answer's simple. When first I became one of the new anarchists, I tried all kinds of respectable disguises. But at last I went in despair to the president of the Central Anarchist Council, who is the greatest man in Europe.
Oh, what's his name?
You wouldn't know it. That is his greatness. He looked at me. You want a safe disguise, do you? I nodded. Why then, dress up as an anarchist, you fool. I took his advice and have never regretted it. I preached blood and murder to those women day and night, and by heaven they would let me wield their perambulators.
You took me in. What do you call this tremendous president of yours?
We call him Sunday. You see, there are 7 members of the Central Anarchist Council, and they are named after the days of the week. He is called Sunday by some of his admirers, Bloody Sunday. It's curious that you should mention the matter, because this very night we've called a meeting to elect a successor to the post of Thursday. And I don't mind telling you that it's almost a settled thing that I am to be Thursday.
Gregory, I gave you a promise before I came to this place. Would you give me, for my own safety, a little promise of the same kind?
Promise?
Yes, a promise. I swore before God that I would not tell your secret to the police. Will you swear by humanity or whatever beastly thing you believe in that you will not tell my secret to the anarchists?
Your secret? Have you got a secret?
Yes, I have a secret. Will you swear?
Yes, I will swear not to tell the anarchists anything you tell me. But look sharp. They'll be here in a couple of minutes.
Well, Gregory, I don't know how to tell you the truth more shortly than by saying that your expedient of dressing up as an aimless poet is not confined to you or your president. We've known the dodge for some time at Scotland Yard.
What do you say?
Yes, Gregory. I'm a police detective.
Mr. Joseph Chamberlain? Mr. Joseph Chamberlain.
It was repeated twice, and thrice, and then 30 times. And the crowd of Joseph Chamberlains, a solemn thought could be heard, trampling down the corridor. Here are your friends, Gregory.
Comrade Gregory, I suppose this man is the delegate?
The fact is, comrade, I have been specially sent here to see that you show a due observance of Sunday.
Well, comrade, I suppose we'd better give you a seat in the meeting.
Gregory, I could see, was in an agony of diplomacy.
Yes, I think it is time we began. The tug is waiting on the river. I move that Comrade Buttons take the chair. Second the motion! All those in favor? Aye! Carried. Comrade Buttons. Comrades, we all lament the sad decease of the heroic worker who occupied the post of Thursday in the Central Council until last week. He organized the great dynamite coup of Brighton, which under happier circumstances ought to have killed everybody on the pier. Upon you tonight, comrades, it devolves to choose out of the company present
The man who shall be called Thursday. If any comrade suggests a name, I will put it to the vote.
I move that Comrade Gregory be elected Thursday.
Does anyone second?
Second the motion.
Before I put the matter to the vote, I will call on Comrade Gregory to make a statement.
Gregory rose. He must have figured out that his best chance was to make a softened and ambiguous speech, such as would leave in my mind the impression that the Brotherhood was a very mild affair after all.
My friend!
There is a back there.
It is deep under the earth that we, the persecuted, are permitted to assemble as the Christians assembled in the catacombs. Suppose we seem as shocking as the Christians because we are really as harmless as the Christians. Suppose we seem as mad as the Christians because we are really as meek.
I am not meek.
Comrade Witherspoon tells us that he is not meek. How little he knows himself. We are simple, as they were simple. Look at Comrade Witherspoon. We are modest, as they were modest. Look at me. We are merciful.
No!
I say we are merciful as the early Christians were merciful. Yet, this did not prevent their being accused of eating flesh. Now, we do not eat human flesh.
Shame! Why not?
Comrade Witherspoon is anxious to know why nobody eats him. In our society, at any rate, which loves him sincerely, which is founded on love.
No, down with love!
Which is founded on love. There will be no difficulty about the aims which we shall pursue as a body, or which I should pursue were I chosen as the representative of that body. Does anyone oppose the election of Comrade Gregory?
Yes,
Comrades!
Who are you?
Gabriel Syme!
Comrade Syme! Comrade Syme, the special delegate.
Have we come here for this? Comrades, we line these walls with weapons and bar that door with death. Lest anyone should come and hear Comrade Gregory saying to us, be good and you will be happy. Honesty is the best policy and virtue is its own reward. Comrade Gregory has told us that we are not the enemies of society. But I say that we are the enemies of society, and so much the worse for society. Hypocrite! Comrade Gregory accuses me of hypocrisy. He knows as well as I do that I am keeping all my engagements and doing nothing but my duty. I do not mince words. I do not pretend to. We do not want the Supreme Council of Anarchy infected with a maudlin mercy. Have Gregory and his milk and water methods on the Supreme Council. I would offer myself for election.
Stop, I tell you. I move as an amendment that Comrade Syme be appointed to the post.
Stop all this, I tell you. Stop it. It is all impossible.
I beg to second the election.
Comrades, I kneel to you. Do not elect this man. The question is that Comrade Syme be elected to the post of Thursday on the General Council.
And 3 minutes afterwards, Mr. Gabriel Syme of the Secret Police Service was elected to the post of Thursday on the General Council of the Anarchists of Europe. A moment later, I found myself, somehow or other, face to face with Gregory.
You are a devil.
And you are a gentleman.
Comrade Thursday, the boat is quite ready.
Comrade Gregory, you've kept your word. You're a man of honor, and I thank you.
What do you mean? What did I promise you?
A very entertaining evening. My name is really Gabriel Syme. I'm not merely a detective who pretends to be a poet. I'm really a poet who has become a detective. I come of a family of cranks. One of my uncles always walked about without a hat. And another had made an unsuccessful attempt to walk about with a hat and nothing else. Being surrounded with every conceivable kind of revolt from infancy, I had to revolt into something, so I revolted into the only thing left, which was sanity. Now, some months before that evening in Saffron Park, I appeared before a high official in Scotland Yard. I was led to a side door. And almost before I knew what I was doing, I was suddenly shown into a room the abrupt blackness of which startled me like a blaze of light.
Are you the new recruit?
All right.
You're engaged.
I really have no experience.
No one has any experience of the Battle of Armageddon.
But I'm really unfit.
You're willing, that is enough.
Well, really? I don't know any profession of which mere willingness is the final test.
I do. Martyrs. I'm condemning you to death. Good day.
Where my adventure ultimately led me, I've already told you. At about 1:30 on a February night, I found myself steaming on a small tug up the silent Thames, the duly elected Thursday of the Central Council of Anarchists. As we came alongside, the great stones of the embankment were big and black against the huge white dawn. I leapt out of the boat onto the slimy steps. The tug put off again and turned upstream. And I saw that there was a man leaning over the parapet and looking out across the river. And then the man smiled. And his smile was a shock. For it was all on one side, going up the right cheek and down on the left. With the dark dawn and the deadly errand and the loneliness and the great dripping stones, there was something unnerving in it. There was the silent river and the silent man. And there was the last nightmare touch, that his smile had suddenly went wrong.
If we walk up towards Leicester Square, we shall just be in time for breakfast. Sunday always insists on an early breakfast.
At one corner of Leicester Square, there projected the balcony of a prosperous but quiet hotel. The balcony contained a breakfast table, and round the breakfast table, glowing in the sunlight, were a group of noisy and talkative men, all dressed in the insolence of fashion. Here, then, was the secret conclave of the European dynamiters. Then, as I continued to stare at them, I saw something that I had not seen before, literally because it was too large to see. At the nearest end of the balcony, blocking up a great part of the perspective, was the back of a great mountain of a man. I first thought that the weight of him must break down the balcony of stone. This man was planned enormously in his original proportions, like a statue, carved deliberately as colossal. His head, crowned with white hair, as seen from behind, looked bigger than a head ought to be. The ears that stood out from it looked larger than human ears. His sense of size was so staggering that when I saw him, all the other figures seemed quite suddenly to dwindle and become dwarfish. They were still sitting there as before with their flowers and frock coats. But now it looked as if the big man was entertaining 5 children to tea. I never thought of asking whether the monstrous man who almost filled and broke the balcony was the great President Sunday, whom the others had stood in awe. I knew it was so. As I walked across the inner room towards the balcony, the large face of Sunday grew larger and larger, and I was gripped with a fear that when he was quite close, the face would be too big to be possible, and that I would scream aloud. I remembered that as a child I would not look at the Mask of Memnon in the British Museum, because it was a face and so large. By an effort braver than that of leaping over a cliff, I went to an empty seat at the breakfast table and sat down. At that moment, the president was addressing a man, out of whose collar there sprang a bewildering bush of brown hair and beard that almost obscured the eyes, like those of a Skye terrier. The man's name, it seemed, was Gogol. He was a Pole. And in this circle of days, he was called Tuesday.
Our friend Tuesday insists on the ways of the stage conspirator. Now, if a gentleman goes about London in a top hat and a frock coat, no one need know that he's an anarchist. But if a gentleman puts on a top hat and a frock coat and then goes about on his hands and knees, well, he may attract attention.
I am not good at concealment. I am not ashamed of the cause.
Yes, you are, my boy, and so is the cause of you.
I am not good at deception.
Right, my boy, right. You aren't good at anything.
As I looked at the others, I began to see in each of them exactly what I had seen in the man by the river. Each man was subtly and differently wrong. Next to me sat Tuesday, the tousle-headed Gogol. Next was Wednesday, a certain Marquis de Saint-Eustache. In the gloom and thickness of his beard, a dark red mouth showed sensual and scornful. Whatever he was not a Frenchman. Then came me, and next A very old man. Professor de Worms, who was Friday. The red flower in his buttonhole showed up against a face that was literally discolored like lead. The whole hideous effect was as if some drunken dandies had put their clothes upon a corpse. And right at the end sat the man called Saturday. His name was Dr. Bull. There was nothing whatever odd about him except that he wore a pair of dark, almost opaque spectacles. And it occurred to me that his eyes might be covered up because they were too frightful to see. Such were the 6 men who had been sworn to destroy the world. Only 3 days afterwards, it appeared, the King of England was to meet the President of the French Republic in Paris. And over their bacon and eggs upon their sunny balcony, these beaming gentlemen had decided how both should die. Even the instrument was chosen. The black-bearded Marquis, it appeared, was to carry the bomb. Most of the talk had paid little attention to me, but the President was always looking at me steadily and with a great and baffling interest. I was sure that in some silent and extraordinary way, Sunday had found out that I was a spy. Meantime, the men were eating as they talked. The Marquis took a great bite of bread and jam.
I have often wondered whether it wouldn't be better for me to do it with a knife. And it would be a new emotion to get a knife into a French president and wriggle it around.
You're wrong. The knife was merely the expression of the old personal quarrel with a personal tyrant. Dynamite is not only our best tool, but our best symbol. It expands. It also destroys because it broadens. And brain, the man's brain is a bomb. My brain feels like a bomb night and day. It must expand. It must expand. A man's brain must expand. If it breaks the universe.
I don't want the universe broken up just yet. I want to do a lot of beastly things before I die. I thought of one yesterday in bed.
The question, gentlemen, is how Comrade Wednesday is to strike the blow. As to the actual arrangements, I suggest that tomorrow he should go first of all.
Before we discuss that, I have something very particular to say.
The instant of choice had come at last. The pistol was at my head.
More speeches, more compromise.
Go. Sit down with the other gentlemen at this table. For the first time this morning, something intelligent is going to be said.
I sat down first. No one except me seemed to have any notion of the blow that was about to fall.
Comrades, we have spun out this farce long enough. We were discussing plans and naming places. I propose that those plans and places should be left wholly in the control of Comrade Saturday, Dr. Bull. Not one word more about the plans and places must be said at this meeting.
They all moved feverishly in their seats, except me. I sat stiff in mine with my hand in my pocket and on the handle of my loaded revolver.
Gentlemen, there is a spy at this table. He'll waste no more words. His name...
I half rose from my seat, my finger firm on the
His
trigger.
name is Gogol. He's that hairy humbug over there who pretends to be a Pole.
How in God's name...
And now, my man, I gather that you fully understand your position.
You bet. I see it's a fair cop. All I say is I don't believe any Pole could have imitated my accent like I did his.
I concede the point. I believe your accent to be inimitable, so I shall practice it in my bar. Do you mind leaving your beard with your card?
Not a bit.
Tuesday, if you ever tell the police or any human soul about us, I shall have exactly 2.5 minutes of discomfort. On your discomfort, I will not dwell. Good day. Mind the step.
The detective who had masqueraded as Gogol rose to his feet without a word and walked out of the room with an air of perfect nonchalance. There was a slight stumble outside the door which showed that the departing detective had not minded his step.
Time is flying. I must get off at once. I have to take the chair at a humanitarian meeting.
Would it not be better to discuss further the details of our project now than that the spy has left us?
Secretary, if you take your head home and boil it for a turnip, it might be useful. I can't say, but it might.
I really fail to understand.
You fail to understand? Why, you dancing donkey. You didn't want to be overheard by a spy, did you? How do you know you aren't overheard now?
With these words, Sunday shouldered his way out of the room, shaking with incomprehensible scorn. Now, if the last words of the president meant anything, they meant that I had, after all, not passed unsuspected. The other four got to their feet, betook themselves elsewhere to find lunch. Only the old anarchist, old Professor de Worms, remained behind, seated before me at the table.
Mr. Gabriel Sam.
Yes, Professor?
You policeman.
Policeman? Whoever made you think of a policeman in connection with me?
The process was simple enough. I thought you looked like a policeman. I think so now.
Why must I be a policeman? Do let me be a postman.
You hear me ask a plain question? You paltering spy. Are you or are you not a police detective?
No.
You swear it. If you swear falsely, will you be damned? Will you be sure that the devil dances at your funeral? Will you see that the nightmare sits on your grave? You are an anarchist. You are a dynamiter. Above all, you are not in any sense a detective. You are not in the British police.
I'm not in the British police. Professor de Worms fell back in his seat with a curious air of kindly collapse.
Oh, that's a pity because I am.
Because you are what?
I am a policeman, a special policeman, and I serve under the man in the dark room.
Man in the dark room? I understand now. Of course. You're not an old man at all.
I can't take my face off here. It's rather an elaborate makeup. Did you know that man Gogol was one of us?
No. But didn't you?
I knew no more than the dead.
Why, then there were 3 of us there. 3 of us sitting here out of 7. And it's a fighting number. If we'd only known that there were 3.
We were 3. If we'd been 300, we still could have done nothing.
Not if we were 300 against 4.
No. Not if we were 300 against Sunday.
Professor, it's intolerable. Are you afraid of this man?
Yes, I am. So are you.
Yes, you're right. I am afraid of him. Therefore, I swear by God that I will seek out this man whom I fear until I find him and strike him on the mouth. If heaven were his throne and the earth his footstool, I swear that I would pull him down.
How? Why?
Because I'm afraid of him. And no man should leave in the universe anything of which he is afraid.
Have you any idea exactly what you're going to do?
Yes, I'm going to prevent this bomb being thrown in Paris.
You any conception how?
No.
You remember, of course, that when we broke up rather hurriedly, the whole arrangements for the atrocity were left in the private hands of the Marquis and Dr. Bull. The Marquis is by this time probably crossing the Channel. The only man who knows where he's going is Dr. Bull.
Confound it, and we don't know where Bull is.
Yes. I know where he is.
Will you tell me?
I'll take you there.
What do you mean? Would you join me? Would you take the risk?
Young man, you think that it is possible to pull down the president. I know that it is impossible, and I'm going to try it.
Call your special attention to the new series of broadcasts by the Mercury Theater with Orson Welles as star and director, which will commence next Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. And now a brief pause for station identification. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System. We continue now with the performance of G.K. Chesterton's The Man Who Was Thursday by Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the Air.
The professor led me to a very respectable inn. And in that place we dined very thoroughly.
Can you play the piano?
Yes, I'm supposed to have a good touch.
You would have done just as well if you could work a typewriter.
Thank you. You flatter me.
Listen to me. There is no man except the president who is so seriously startling and formidable as Dr. Bull, that little grinning fellow in goggles. Depend on it. Sunday was not asleep when he locked up all the plans of this outrage in the round, black head of Dr. Bull.
Do you think that this unique monster will be soothed if I play the piano to him?
I mentioned the piano because it gives one quick and independent fingers. Sign, if we are to go through this interview and come out sane or alive, we must have some code of signals between us that this brute will not see. I have made a rough alphabetical cipher corresponding to the 5 fingers like this. Listen. B. A. D. Bad. A word we may frequently require.
I began to study the scheme. It didn't take me long to learn how we might convey simple messages by what would seem to be idle taps upon a table or knee. It was not long before Dr. Bull came in, sat down at our table. He smiled brightly.
You're early this evening, gentlemen.
The quiet good humor of his manner left us helpless. We sat staring at each other in silence. I have an intuition. Then sit on it. It is quite an extraordinary intuition. Extraordinary rot. I am a poet. You're a dead man. You scarcely realize how poetic my intuition is. It has that certain quality we sometimes feel in the coming of spring. Go to blazes. Dr. Bull. Quiet. Dr. Bull. Dr. Bull, would you do me a small favor? Would you be so kind as to take off your spectacles? Dr. Bull rose slowly, still smiling, and took off his spectacles. He was sitting in the chair before us. And we saw there a very boyish-looking young man. The smile was still there, but it might have been the first smile of a baby. Dr. Bull, I am a police officer.
The dark room.
The dark room.
Well, I'm awfully glad you came so early, for we can all start for France together. Yes, I'm in the force, all right.
But good heavens, if this were true, there were more blasted detectives than there were blasted dynamiters at the blasted council.
We might easily have fought. We were 4 against 3.
No, we were not 4 against 3. We were not so lucky. We are 4 against 1.
An hour later, we were already on the Calais boat. The fact that comes of it is this. We 3 are alone on this planet. Now we must do something to keep the Marquis in Calais till tomorrow midday, while the King goes safely through Paris. The only thing I can see to do is actually to take advantage of the very things that are in the Marquis's favor. Gentlemen, I'm going to profit by the fact that he is a nobleman and has many friends and moves in the best society.
What the devil are you talking about?
The Marquis cannot deny that he is a gentleman, and in order to put the matter of my social position quite beyond a doubt, I propose, at the earliest opportunity, to knock his hat off. Oh, but here we are in the harbor. Gentlemen, we've reached Calais. A band was playing in a Café Chantant hidden somewhere among the trees, where sat the Marquis de Saint-Eustache. The man had 2 companions, solemn Frenchmen in silk hats.
You are Monsieur Syme, I think.
And you are the Marquis de Saint-Eustache. Permit me to pull your nose, which I attempted to do, but the 2 men in top hats held me back. This man has insulted me.
Insulted you when?
Oh, just now. He's insulted my mother.
Insulted your mother?
Well, anyhow, my aunt.
But how can the Marquis have insulted your aunt just now? He has been sitting here all the time.
Ah, it was what he
I
said.
said nothing at all except about the band. I only said that I like Wagner, played well.
It was an allusion to my family. My aunt played Wagner badly. It was a painful subject. We are always being insulted about it.
This seems most extraordinary.
Oh, I assure you, the whole of your conversation was simply packed with sinister allusions to my aunt's weaknesses.
Oh, this is nonsense. I, for one, have said nothing for half an hour, except that I like the singing of that girl with the black hair.
Well, there you are again. My aunt's was red.
It seems to me that you're simply seeking a pretext to insult the Marquis.
By George. What a clever chap you are.
Seeking a quarrel with me. By heaven, there was never a man who had to seek long. These gentlemen will perhaps act for me. There are still 4 hours of daylight. Let us fight this evening.
Marquis, your action is worthy of your fame and blood. Permit me to consult with the gentleman in whose hands I shall place myself. Good day.
What are you up to?
Now listen carefully. Bull, Professor, you are my seconds. And you must insist on the duel coming off after 7 tomorrow, so as to keep him from catching the 7:45 for Paris. If he misses that train, he misses the King of England. You understand? So at 7:20, we met on a small meadow not far from the railway. I'd made up my mind that I could avoid disabling the Marquis and prevent the Marquis from disabling me for at least 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, the Paris train would have gone by.
Gentlemen, engage.
I'm not a bad fighter. Every now and then, I'd almost fancied I felt my point go home. But there was no blood on the blade or my shirt. And now we could hear the Paris train. There was no doubt about the hit this time. I was as certain that I had stuck my blade into my enemy as a gardener that has stuck his spade into the ground. Yet there was no blood on it at all. Marquis fought wildly. He constantly looked away at the railway line, almost as if he feared the train more than the pointed steel. I aimed less at the Marquis's body and more at his throat and head. A minute and a half afterwards, I felt the point enter the man's neck below the jaw. It came out clean. I thrust again and made what should have been a bloody scar on the Marquis's cheek. But there was no scar.
Stop! I want to say something. It is rather important. It's the sign. You expressed a wish to pull my nose. Would you oblige by pulling my nose now as quickly as possible? I have to catch a train.
I protest that this is most irregular.
Will you or will you not pull my nose? Come, Mr. Syme. Don't be selfish. Pull my nose at once when I ask you.
I took 2 paces forward and seized the Roman nose of this remarkable nobleman. I pulled it hard, and it came off in my hand.
If anyone has the use for my left eyebrow, he can have it. Do accept my left eyebrow. It is the kind of thing that might come in useful any day.
The Marquis was recklessly throwing parts of himself right and left about the field.
You are making a mistake, but it can't be explained just now. I tell you, the train has come into the station.
Yes, Marquis, and the train shall go out of the station. It shall go out without you.
Will you drive me mad?
You shall not go by the train.
Great, fat, blasted, blear-eyed, blundering, thundering, brainless, doddering, blasted fool! You great silly pink-faced toilet turnip!
You shall not go by this train!
And why in the infernal blazes should I want to go by the train?
We know all. You are going to Paris to throw a bomb.
Going to Jericho to throw a Jabberwock? I didn't care about catching the train. I cared about whether the train caught me, and now, by God, it has caught me.
What do you mean?
It means everything. The end of everything. Sunday has us now in the hollow of his hand.
Us? What do you mean by us?
The police, of course. I am no Marquis. I am Inspector Ratcliffe of Scotland Yard.
Then the whole bally lot of us on the Anarchist Council were against anarchy. Every born man was a detective except the president and his personal secretary. What can it mean?
It means that we are struck dead. Don't you know Sunday? I tell you, he's bought every trust. He's captured every cable. He has control of every railway line, especially of that railway line. The whole movement was controlled by him. Half the world was ready to rise for him. But there were just 5 people, perhaps, who could have resisted him. And the old devil put them on the Supreme Council to waste their time in watching each other. Sunday knew that the professor would chase Syme through London, that Syme would fight me in France, and he was combining great masses of capital, seizing great lines of telegraphy, while we 5 idiots were running after each other like a lot of confounded babies playing blind man's buff. And since you really want to know what was my objection to the arrival of that train, I'll tell you. My objection was that Sunday, or his secretary, has just this moment got out of it.
We all turned our eyes toward the station. A considerable bulk of people seemed to be moving in our direction.
They may be ordinary tourists.
Ordinary tourists wear black masks halfway down the face.
It was quite true that the leader in front wore a black half mask almost down to his mouth. And the mouth was smiling, a crooked smile, on one side of the face.
I can't believe it. The thing is nonsense. The plain people of a peaceable French town.
Someone has shot at us! Pray resume your remarks, Dr. Bull. You were talking, I think, about the plain people of a peaceable French town.
Stop! Here come the police!
They're charging them out!
No! No, they're forming along the parade!
They've unslung their carbines.
Yes, and they're going to fire on us.
Police have joined the mob!
The mob, advancing steadily, was almost on top of us.
Charge the anarchists!
Charge the anarchists!
There was no doubt of it. The leader was Monday. Monday, secretary of the council. Under the black mask, his mouth was working horribly.
Monday! Stop! Charge the anarchists! Swords! For our time has come to die!
There's some mistake, Mr. Syme. I heartily think you understand your position. I arrest you in the name of the law.
Law? But you are the secretary of the Anarchist Council.
Nonsense. I am a detective from Scotland Yard.
That night, 5 bewildered but hilarious detectives returned to London. And next morning, having found Gogol, we marched stolidly toward the hotel in Leicester Square.
This is more cheerful. We are 6 men going to ask one man what he means.
I think it's a bit queerer than that. I think it's 6 men going to ask one man what they mean. We saw at once the little balcony and a figure that looked too big for it. He was sitting alone with bent head, poring over a newspaper, but all his counselors who had come to vote him down crossed that square as if we were watched out of heaven by 100 eyes. We went up the dark stair in silence.
Delightful. So pleased to see you all. What an exquisite day it is. Is the king dead?
No, sir, there has been no massacre. I bring you news of no such disgusting spectacle.
Disgusting spectacles? You mean Dr. Bull's spectacles?
My spectacles are blackened, but I'm not. Look at my face.
I dare say it's the sort of face that grows on one. In fact, it grows on you. I dare say it'll grow on me someday.
We have come here to know what all this means. Who are you? What are you?
What am I? If you want to know what you are, you're a set of highly well-intentioned young jackasses.
And you, what are you?
What am I?
The president rose slowly to incredible heights, like some enormous wave about to arch above us and break.
You want to know what I am, do you? Bull, you're a man of science. Grub in the roots of these trees and find out the truth about them. Syme, you're a poet. Stare at those morning clouds and tell me the truth about morning clouds. But I tell you this, that you will have found out the truth of the last tree and the topmost cloud before the truth about me. You will understand the sea, and I shall still be a riddle. You shall know what the stars are, and not know what I am. Since the beginning of the world, all men have hunted me like a wolf. Kings and sages and poets and lawgivers, all the churches and all the philosophers. But I have never been caught yet, and the skies will fall in the time I turn to bay. I have given them a good run for their money, and I will now.
Before any of us could move, the monstrous man had swung himself over the balustrade of the balcony, yet before he dropped, he pulled himself up again and thrust his great chin over the edge of the balcony.
There's one thing I'll tell you, though, about who I am. I am the man in the dark room who made you all policemen.
Sunday fell from the balcony, bouncing on the stones below like a great ball of India rubber, and went bounding off towards the corner of the Alhambra, where he hailed a hansom cab and sprang inside of it. Of course, we all followed him. And at the highest ecstasy of speed, Sunday turned round, and sticking his great grinning head out of the cab, he made a horrible face at us, flung a ball of paper at me, and vanished. I caught the paper.
What does it say, Syme?
Let's see. No one would regret anything in the nature of an interference by the Archdeacon more than I. I trust it will not come to that. But for the last time, where are your galoshes? The thing is too bad, especially after what Uncle said. Fire engine appeared, and the president leaped incredibly from his hansom, caught the back of the engine, and slung himself onto it.
After him! There's no mistaking the fire engine!
Our cabmen whipped up their horses, and the president acknowledged this proximity by coming to the back of the fire engine, bowing repeatedly, kissing his hand, and finally flinging out to us a neatly folded note.
Read it! Read it! Fly at once! The truth about your trouser stretchers is known! Our friends! What place is this?
Sunday had jumped from the fire engine over an iron gate, and we'd followed him to a kind of park.
Can it be the old devil's house? No, you fools! It's the zoo!
Come this way.
That's what? Come where?
The elephant.
An elephant?
An elephant has gone mad and run away.
What?
Yes, he's run away with an old gentleman, a poor old gentleman with white hair.
What sort of old
A
gentleman?
very large and fat old gentleman in light grey clothes.
The elephant has not run away with him. He has run away with the elephant. And by thunder, there he is.
There was no doubt about it this time. Clean across the space of grass with a crowd screaming and scampering gaily at his heels went a huge gray elephant. On its back sat President Sunday with all the placidity of a sultan.
Stop him! He'll be out the gate!
Stop a landslide! He's out of the gate! after street, through district after district, went the prodigy of the flying elephant, and we followed it through the city, out into the suburbs, and finally to a fairgrounds. The president had disappeared. Look! Look over there!
Look at what?
Look at the captive balloon!
Why the blazes should I look at a captive balloon? What is there queer about a captive balloon?
Nothing, except that it isn't captive.
10,000 devils! He's got into it!
We'd followed that balloon. All afternoon we'd followed it, and then, about twilight, the preposterous thing had staggered in the sky and sunk from view into the woods.
Oh, if he's cheated us all by getting killed, it would be like one of his larks.
And almost at the same moment, all 6 of us realized that we were not alone in the little field. Across a square of turf, a tall man was coming towards us, leaning on a strange long staff like a scepter. His advance was very quiet. He might have been one of the shadows of the wood.
Gentlemen, my master has a carriage waiting for you in the road just by.
Who is your master?
I was told you knew his name.
Where is this carriage?
Has been waiting only a few moments. My master has only just come home.
All 6 of us compared notes afterwards and quarreled. But we all agreed that in some unaccountable way the place where we came that night reminded us of our boyhood. It was either this elm top or that crooked path. It was either this scrap of orchard or that shape of a window. But each man of us declared that he could remember this place before he could remember his mother.
Refreshments are provided for you in your room.
I entered a splendid suite of apartments that seemed to be designed specially for me.
I have put out your clothes, sir.
Clothes? I have no clothes except these.
My master asks me to say that there is a fancy dress ball tonight. You're to be dressed as Thursday, sir.
Dressed as Thursday? Doesn't sound a very warm costume.
Oh, yes, sir. The Thursday costume is quite warm, sir. It fastens up to the chin.
I was led onto a very large old English garden full of torches and bonfires, by the broken light of which a vast carnival of people were dancing in motley dress. I seemed to see every shape in nature imitated in some crazy costume. There was a man dressed as a windmill with enormous sails, a man dressed as an elephant, a man dressed as a balloon. There was a dancing lamppost, a dancing apple tree, a dancing ship. One would have thought that the untamable tune of some mad musician had set all the common objects of field and street dancing an eternal jig. And long afterwards, when I was middle-aged and at rest, I could never see one of those particular objects, a lamppost or an apple tree or a windmill, without thinking that it was a strayed reveler from that revel of a masquerade. On one side of this lawn, in a kind of crescent, stood 7 great chairs, the thrones of the 7 days. And so the night wore on, and finally the last of the dancers vanished, and the fire faded, and the long, slow, strong stars came out. And we 7 strange men were left alone, like 7 stone statues on our chairs of stone. Then Sunday spoke.
We will eat and drink later. Let us remain together a little, we who have loved each other so sadly and have fought so long. I seem to remember only centuries of heroic war, in which you were always heroes, epic on epic, Iliad on Iliad, and you always brothers in arms.
Tell me, who are you?
I am the Sabbath. I am the peace of God.
I'm grateful to you. Not only for wine and hospitality here, but for many a fine scamper and free fight. But I should like to know. My soul and heart are as happy and quiet here as this old garden. But my reason is still crying out. I should like to know.
It seems so silly that you should have been on both sides and fought yourself.
I have heard your complaints, and here, I think, comes another to complain. We will hear him also.
And we saw standing before us the red-headed poet of Saffron Park. Gregory! Why, this is the real anarchist.
Yes. I am the real anarchist. There came a day when the sons of God came before the Lord, and Satan also came with them.
All right. I'm a destroyer. I would destroy the world if I could.
Oh, most unhappy man. Try to be happy. You have red hair like your sister.
I know what you are, all of you, from first to last. You're the people in power. You're the police, the great fat smiling men in blue and buttons. You're the law. You're the 7 angels of heaven, and you've had no troubles. Oh, I could forgive you everything if I could feel for once that you had suffered for 1 hour a real agony, such as I.
I see everything. Everything. Everything that there is. Why does each thing on earth war against each other thing? Why does a fly have to fight the whole universe? Why does a dandelion have to fight the whole universe? For the same reason that I had to be alone in the dreadful council of the days. So that each thing that obeys law may have the glory and the isolation of the anarchist. So that by tears and torture we may earn the right to say to this accuser, we also have suffered. I repel the slander. We have not been happy. I can answer for every one of the great gods of law whom he has accused. At least. And I saw suddenly the great face of Sunday. Have you ever suffered? As I gazed, the great face grew to an awful size larger than the colossal mask of Memnon, which had made me scream as a child. It grew larger and larger, filling the whole sky. Then in the blackness, before it entirely destroyed my brain, I seemed to hear a distant voice saying a commonplace text that I had heard somewhere.
Can ye drink of the cup that I drink of?
When men in books awake from a vision, they commonly find themselves in some place in which they might have fallen asleep. I could only remember that gradually and naturally, I knew that I was awake and had been walking along a country lane. Dawn was breaking over everything, in colors at once clear and timid, as if nature made a first attempt at yellow and a first attempt at rose. A breeze blew so clean and sweet that one could not think it blew from the sky. It blew rather through some hole in the sky. I felt a simple surprise when I saw, rising all round me on both sides of the road, the red, irregular buildings of Saffron Park. I walked by instinct along one white road on which early birds hopped and sang, and found myself outside a fenced garden. And there I saw the sister of Gregory, Rosamond, the girl with the gold-red hair, cutting lilac before breakfast, with the great unconscious gravity of a girl.
Tonight, the Columbia Broadcasting System, through its member stations coast to coast, and the network of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, has brought you a production of G.K. Chesterton's The Man Who Was Thursday, by Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the Air. The adaptation for radio was made by Mr. Welles. This Monday night concludes the summer broadcasts, which have introduced the Mercury Theater as the first complete theatrical producing company in radio. But the tremendous response which their efforts have drawn from all parts of the country has ensured their continuance with us through the coming months. The Columbia Broadcasting System is therefore proud to announce a new series of weekly productions by Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the Air, beginning next Sunday evening, September the 11th, from 8 to 9 o'clock Eastern Daylight Saving Time. The first play next Sunday at 8 will be Vincent van Gogh, an original drama based on the letters of the famous painter to his brother Theo and the records of his biographers. In the cast this evening, Sunday, Eustace Wyatt, the Professor Ray Collins, Gregory, George Coulouris, the Marquis Edgar Barrier, Gogol, Paul Stewart, Bull, Joseph Cotton, the Secretary Erskine Sanford, Witherspoon, Alan Devitt, Rosamond Anna Stafford, and Gabriel Syme, The Man Who Was Thursday, by Orson Welles. Davidson Taylor supervised for the Columbia Network. This is Dan Seymour speaking. The orchestra was directed by Alexander Semler. Remember, next Sunday evening at 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Saving Time, Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the air in Vincent van Gogh.